But wasn't this one of the early tournaments where there's like one of those infamous videos of you where you're just like completely lit as fuck? You're just like against the wall like this. It's like it's either like Sid or pointing at you.
That video still exists.
It does.
It's actually still up. It wasn't Korea. It was actually IEM New York.
Okay, this is going to be episode 14 of Listen Loco, and shit segue. Probably most people watching this episode now were 14 when this man was playing, because our guest is Chauster, old school League of Legends pro, formerly of CLG, most notably, obviously. And then it wasn't that long into the LCS era that he disappeared as a player. It was, I think it was towards the end of, I think it would have been pre-season 4, I think it was.
Late 2013.
You left after the first split Monty coached, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Something like that. I kind of lose track.
Okay, one thing I always mention, I've often mentioned this on my other shows to preface talking about the history, is that to people like us who've been in the industry for a while, you think to yourself, like, I've heard all the stories a million times, you know, about like going to Korea and hotshot GG swapping positions and stuff. But you have to remember, most people actually who are watching the show now don't actually even really know those stories. Like, they've only heard like they've seen someone reference it on Reddit, or maybe they saw it on an old video, you know. So you can't take for granted actually that people know the history of League of Legends. So Chauster, you are in theory, along with like, you know, Reginald and Hotshot, these sorts of people, Dyrus, among the first League of Legends people to even get good enough to where it started to get pro, right?
Yep, that's true. Sorry,
okay.
Do you just want me to go along with that?
Yeah, go on. Tell me about it.
I mean, back in the day, League of Legends, you know, to me, it was just a video game. Everyone just played around, and you think like you see these established teams nowadays, right? You think CLG, TSM, how did they really get their roots? It's really just the moment Riot introduced, like, I think they announced WCG 2010, and it's not like there were a bunch of teams at the time. There was nothing. It's just one big preseason ranked queue, and how the original CLG came together was Hotshot. He knew that at the time. I think there was only like, I think we're gonna talk about this maybe later. There's like Koreans. There's preseason Koreans who were really good, and then there were the NA people, which is basically me and Big Fat Gigi. When we were the only pre-mates at the time that were dominating. And when Riot announced this tourney, obviously it was a North American tourney. Hotshot was the first person to be like, "Hey, let's get these North American guys together. Let's win some money." So that's basically how it all started. And then, you know, Reginald had his crew. He had, I think, I'm not even sure if his website was established at the time. I think it was up.
Yeah, he had it.
Yeah, he just started making guides, and then he had his own like a few people. We had a few people, and that's how it all began.
You know, like people know the famous, like, sarcastic line about season 1 championship, that it was like held in Freak's basement because it was at DreamHack, which famously DreamHack was just, its known theme is it was the biggest LAN party in the world. You know, like 10,000 people went there. I've been there many times for Counter-Strike myself. And because it was just a big LAN party, you know, the tournaments were like on the side of the tournament like that. People get that's a good way of showing how small, even in 2011, League of Legends was. But the tournament you're talking about, the 2010 World Cyber Games, was one where I went to the tournament as a journalist to cover mainly like StarCraft and Counter-Strike. I think StarCraft 2 as well maybe was in it. I can't remember if they were both in that year or not. This might have been just before StarCraft 2 came out. But these were like the big games at the time. And because I worked for SK Gaming's team, that's the only reason I even knew this tournament existed, because someone told me like, oh, make sure you go over and take like a photo of whoever wins like this League of Legends tournament. That's like a 4-team tournament, you know, like not proper teams. There's no scene, as you're saying at the time. It's just people put together like mixed teams basically. And so this is even before any semblance of tournaments basically. And at the time, this was not even a famous game. Like there was no massive crowd of people watching, you know, it was a really small little competition. So what about that then, Chauster? Since, as you say, you're not someone who got into League of Legends to become famous or become a pro or whatever, when did it actually feel like it became like an esports game? And it went from like, I'm not just a good player, but I'm actually trying to be like the best or be a pro or something.
I think it kind of happened organically. If you think of the way I think about myself, I don't really think of myself as, say, an esports player. I'm just someone who plays video games, right? I think traditionally everyone who's been in the scene, everyone grew up, no one thought they were going to grow up to be professional video game players, right? No one, not a single person did. I always thought, I grew up, I was really good at playing video games. I was actually probably made to play video games professionally,
Mhm.
but I play the game, you get good at the game, and then I kind of think of what's next, right? I don't really think about I'm gonna spend the rest of my life in esports per se,
Mhm.
but maybe in another life I probably would have, but there's a lot of outside pressures and stuff. So
Damn, that was really different for me because I grew up watching StarCraft, and all I ever wanted to do was be a professional gamer. So when League of Legends came out and I became good, I was like, "Fuck, I want to be a pro gamer so fucking bad. I hope League of Legends gets big, and I hope I can be pro in this." Because I tried being pro in StarCraft 1, that was way too fucking difficult, and I was way too young. And in Dota, I had relative success, but the scene was way too small to do anything with it really. And the League of Legends, now this was a game that I was already really good at from playing Dota, semi-professionally, and I was just praying to the gods like, please let League of Legends get big. I want to be a pro gamer in this. I guess like kind of difference in culture where I grew up in both Korea and America, and we had a lot of like professional gamers already in Korea, where in America like pro gaming was what, like people playing Halo on weekends for money.
Chauster, one thing people do not know the story is of when was the first time you met this degenerate fuck called Locodoco? When did you encounter this sorry soul? Presumably on the NA server, right?
I believe the first I met him or I saw him, because I'm pretty
Let's
sure
do
I
online.
saw
Let's do online and offline.
online. I don't really, to be 100% honest, I don't remember how we met in person.
I remember both.
The very first time I don't remember, but online I just remember. I think it was just through solo queue. I was like, it's just some random guy playing Tristana. That's like the first thing I have Loco, and then I think at the time he was like my fan.
Oh my.
So I think
Understandable. Yeah.
that's my first. That was my first memory of Loco.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Good job we
How
didn't give you
did-
the
how did we
J-Dog
first-
treatment, I guess.
How
So
did we first meet, like
Okay.
in person?
Online definitely true. Chauster was way better than me at first. So I knew Chauster like the original famous people were Chauster, Elements, Hotshot, and Reginald, and because they were at the top of the ladder, they've been playing things beta, and they were in CLG and they streamed, so they were like the cool kids. So I did meet Chauster online first. I'm sure I fanboyed over him a little bit, but I not too much. How we met offline, I think, was WCG, like the one in Korea. Which year is that? Is that 2011?
2011.
Yeah. I think it was 2011. We didn't qualify, but I knew you guys. I knew Andy. I knew Jad. I knew some of the Korean players going to WCG. So me, Helios, we both like got in a bus and we went to I think it was Busan. I want to say Busan. Was it in Busan? I forgot.
I think it was.
I forgot where it was, but we took a bus and yeah, like to go see you, and I think that's where we first met.
So that was when we actually first met.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember the photos, and I remember my time in Korea. Like we went out, and we hung out with the Korean players,
Yeah.
right? Okay, okay.
Okay. Wasn't this one of the tournaments where it won't exist anymore, Chelsea, so I can probably mention this now while we're safe. But wasn't this one of the early tournaments where there's like one of those infamous videos of you where you're just like completely lit as fuck? You're just like against the wall like this. It's like it's either like
that video still exists.
It does.
It's actually still up. It wasn't
Okay.
Korea. It was actually IEM New York.
Right.
So
Okay.
that was a video Elements took of IEM. Pretty sure it was IEM New York. Kind of like a Twitch after party.
Yeah.
The Twitch they treated us out. You go there,
Sure, yeah.
tiny party, take some drinks, and for me, I take a little alcohol, I just knock out. So
He's a
there's
gamer. Yeah.
it's just me. I don't know. A lot of gamers can drink their alcohol. I can't. So
Okay.
if I'm bored, I'll just fall asleep. So I just took a little alcohol. I'm in the club, booming music everywhere, and then I just go to sleep. And that's what's on the video. What's not on the video is I think Garvey was there, but I think what happened afterwards is like one of those. I think guests, maybe one of those Twitch girls or something. They apparently they came up and they slapped me awake because I was asleep and they thought it was funny. I don't know. That's what I heard. It's pretty funny.
Different world back then, right? Thing is though, Loco, when you say that, like like you did look up to Chauster a bit. Obviously, again, people aren't going to know the context. That we're talking about an era before Loco was a pro player, when he was like just playing a bit when he was in North America. And at the time, Chauster was considered one of the best players. I mean, at the time, who would it be? Like you, Big Fat GG, Hotshot even. Yeah, these are all the best players, right?
Yeah, Chauster, Hotshot, Andy, even Elements was considered really good back then. Saint, and then Chauster's like, yeah, they were good, but not as good as me. Chauster really wants to speak up and say how better than they were.
I don't want to step on anyone's toes, you know. But I mean, a lot of the old pros, it's really hard to say. It's hard for me to really say this and for people to take it at face value, because I also played in the old era. But there are many old pros who would still be good today, but there are many old pros who never deserved to be pro in the first place.
Oof.
And that's kind of, you know, it's kind of hard to say who's and who. Like, you'd really need someone maybe that still plays today and kind of comment back on the past. Like, who's someone that played in the past that played with Doublelift? Well, I mean, he's, you know, he would obviously take my word. That's like a biased source, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like I would say, like, if Reginald played and he was motivated even today, like, he would, in terms of at least from an NA native mid lane player, he could probably hold his own against other native NA mid players. That's my opinion.
Sure.
That's just how I feel. So, I mean,
yeah. No, Andy's still pretty good for how much he plays. I met him in solo queue, and I also saw him randomly on Doublelift stream. So, and he does have like his spikes of being good. He just gets too tilted playing with.
Wait a minute, Loco. Wait a minute. If I just do a basic bit of deduction on what you just said there, you met Reginald in solo queue.
Yeah.
You've just acknowledged doesn't play the game much,
yeah.
but he's still around the level that he could be drawn into your game, and we know you play the fuck out of this game. That's depressing, homie. That is kind of depressing, right? I'm just saying, if you put all the pieces together there, you know. I'm hovering. It must be pretty good, yeah.
I'm hovering D4. I'm hovering D3 around that area, and Andy's there. And sometimes Andy duos with higher elo people, so he'll randomly show up on people's streams. So I saw him on Double Stream recently. So Andy still is at a decent level whenever he plays.
Okay. Right, Chauster, people know the story of Doublelift getting into the scene, and like early on he was a support player, and then he became finally the AD carry to play with you guys. But people only actually know that story from the perspective of like Doublelift and Travis Scafford and how they met, you know, and then Doublelift's own story of his own family, and then Hotshot getting him into the team, etc. When did you first meet Doublelift? Since obviously you were someone who was quite an influence on his career. How did you first discover this guy? Did you actually know he was good at the beginning?
So I wouldn't say I met or discovered him. That was all Hotshot. I think it was all kind of Hotshot met this guy in solo queue.
Plays Blitzcrank.
Played Blitz. He said he was really good. I don't even remember if he told me this, because we were literally a group of 5 players on Skype that grouped up for tournament. That's it. We played solo queue here and there. I think Hotshot might have vaguely referenced like there's this insane Blitz player, and my first thought was just like, I don't really care. I probably played better Blitz than him anyways, which is probably true. But then, but yeah, that's what I first heard of Doublelift, and then I think, I don't know, it's been so long and my history's all flawed. I think he just ended up playing a few like competitive games with EG. Or,
Epic Gamers.
I know he was duo laning with Steve from Liquid, was his duo lane partner, and that was the bot lane. It was I don't know how you guys reference Steve. How do you guys just Steve?
Call him Liquid,
Steve, right?
Liquid.
Yeah, it was literally Steve and Doublelift. And one of my first memories of that is just Steve's just playing Soraka, Doublelift's just playing like some AD carry, and they're just farming bot lane. That was their bot lane. So that's kind of like my first introduction to Doublelift as like an external player.
I remember how I remember Doublelift used to be like a CLG TSM groupie where he would play Blitz and Hotshot. So like for all like the outside like non TSM or CLG people, there was something called GG's Ventrilo. It's where all the good players played and all the good players had access to that Ventrilo, and you wanted to get into that Ventrilo really badly.
It's basically just a different type of program to TeamSpeak for anyone who doesn't know, or whatever you used, curse chat now, or whatever you call it.
Yeah. It was like Discord in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
To get in, and Doublelift got in there, and then once you're in there, you could talk to the pros, and you could hang with them, and maybe you could play in a scrim with them, or maybe they'll take you to a tournament if someone isn't able to. So like Hotshot liked double, but I think CLG was full at the time, and then EG needed a person. So for WCG, that's how double got into EG. And then after that, I'm not sure why, but Doublelift wanted to switch to AD carry, and he started grinding out AD carry. And then Steve wanted to start his own team. And before Curse, there was something. I forgot whatever the hell it was called, but before Curse, there was something. And then Doublelift joined that team with Steve, and then that eventually turned into Curse. And then Chauster can now fill in where CLG picked up Doublelift to be their AD carry, and then you went to support.
So I think at first what happened was Doublelift tried to play support for CLG, or he subbed in a tournament, and it was just all bad. Like, I'll extrapolate upon this later. But it was just like, this guy can't play support. He has no map awareness. He doesn't know what's going on. I can't tell if it was the nerves or whatever. But basically, after that game, I think we kind of confirmed, like, okay, this guy is never going to play support for us. Because originally, I think that was possibly what could have happened. Because I was playing
Elements
ADC.
got kicked, I think, right?
Yeah, I think I was playing ADC at the time. So why Elements got kicked is, I think, we didn't practice together. I don't think he was really doing his job in lane. And I think as kind of, God, the story is just kind of not really out there. I'm just saying, short story short, Elements was kicked, and we needed to shuffle around the roster, right? And then we're like, oh, what's going to happen now? I think at the time I could replace anyone at their role and be better than them, or I could fill in support. And I thought about it at the time. I was like, what's the best for my team? Even if we get, like, I think the options for support at the time were Nat and Win. You guys?
Nat Win, yeah,
Nat Win?
sure.
I don't remember if Bloodwater. I'm pretty sure Bloodwater wasn't even.
I think he was maybe very early on in the scene, but I don't think he was at that time.
It was like Golden Boy, Soraka, or something.
Yeah, it was these options where I was just like, I don't actually think they're good enough, and I really didn't like the idea of Hotshot being support. Cause I just thought about it. I was like, oh god, this is not gonna work. So this is terrible. Like, so then we eventually, I think we decided on picking up Doublelift as AD carry, and I would support him under the assumption that I already know how to play support.
Okay.
So that's how Doublelift Chauster lane came to be.
When you first got him as an AD carry, was it as ridiculous as some of those stories where, like, you're just saying stuff like, like, basically just do everything I say, like, don't even think for yourself. I'll sort of like puppet your body. I'm the brain in this scenario. Was it that extreme when he first started?
I would say the stories are worse than anything that's out there.
All right. You like, breathe now, regulate heart temperature.
It's like he didn't have any game sense. He didn't think proactively. He was just a reactive player. I can't really.
just like an animal.
I just want to like
just acted on instinct.
And talk about it. Like, I don't want to.
Chauster, who cares? No. What are you gonna do? Get fired from your team?
No, it's
just go for it. Go for it, dog.
Sounds bad, but basically, Doublelift comes on the team. He was not a good player. Everything about him, everything that Hotshot told me, it was kind of like, I was like, what the hell? This guy's playing ADC for our team. We're fucked, man. We're screwed. Like, he doesn't know shit. Right. He can't play the exchanges. He doesn't have any idea of map control. He literally knows nothing. He knows nothing. I go ward. He dies 2v1. Let's say both bot lane gets level 2 advantage. We're both level 1. He walks up to CS. In fact, I think this happened. I have a memory like planted in my head. We're playing against, actually, it was Locodoco bot lane. It was Locodoco versus me and Doublelift. This is the first time I think we were in Korea.
Oh, OGN.
Yeah. So we were not good yet. I think the first time, I think we were on our way to getting good. And I remember one of my distinct memories is we were like a shit bot lane too. We were like Alistar Vayne, something like completely terrible level 1. Something, I don't know, something remote similar to that. And then I just remember we were level 1, Loco's lane, both hit level 2. You're not supposed to CS, right? Double just walks up gets CC'd, blows flash, he almost dies. The next CS he walks up again and he dies, and we're just like, okay, we gotta re-rank this match. We gotta remake the game. You know, it's just like
this MMR system shit. How they give me these teammates?
like that's like that memory is implanted in my head, and also the countless times where I would I'm like, it sounds like a joke, but I'd be like, all right, Doublelift, I'm gonna go ward. I announce it because I know he's gonna die 2v1, and he dies. But I announced it so the team kind of sees, like, oh my god, like, dude, you knew he was gonna go ward, dude. You gotta go back.
Yeah.
Man, I had a really similar experience with Mad Life. So how I met Mad Life was I used to play there used to be ranked and then there used to be normal queue. Those are the only two queues. And whenever young Loco was thirsty and he wanted to play with online girls, but he didn't want to ruin his elo, he would play with them in normals. And we would actually versus Mad Life a lot because my normal ELO was incredibly high and Mad Life's normal ELO was incredibly high. And that's how I kind of ran into Mad Life. I noticed he had 148 ping, so I knew he was Korean, so we added him and we talked. And when I like skipping a lot of stuff, when I actually started first playing with Mad Life, I had a very similar experience to Chauster did with Doublelift, where he didn't know anything about competitive play. And then I actually remember the level 2 stuff that Chauster talked about, because that's something me and Mad Life love doing, and that's something we caught on to much faster than other duos. We knew that 7 creeps would give you level 2, and we would play for that level 2 power spike extremely, extremely hard. And we played stuff like Tristana All-Star a lot, so our level 2 all-ins were incredibly strong. And you could flash in middle of Tristana jump to extend the range back then. So we would do that even when people flashed out, we'd still be able to get to them. So yeah, that's something like we did really well and like we abused people with. Speaking a little bit about OGN Invitational, can you, like, one thing like you're really famous for is being like incredibly smart and incredibly opinionated. Like before OGN Invitational happened, and in general, there's like an infamous quote that I have to mention that a lot of people talked about is, Koreans will never be better than North Americans. Like, I actually do think there was some merit to that when you made that statement. So yeah, kind of unraveling that. What do you think the general consensus was for like the way old school Koreans and like how North Americans view them?
Did I say that?
Was it you or Double?
There was two. Chauster did say something like that they wouldn't be ever as good and they would have to catch up. I think it was Doublelift who said the epic line of like they'll always be 1 year behind or something like, 2 years behind or something.
I think if I said anything, I'm pretty sure I followed up with the stipulation that they can catch up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd say anything that I don't think I'd say anything like that that would easily lead me to be proven wrong. I don't usually do that,
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of that, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Korean infrastructure, they're a lot more. They've been in esports for so long. They take it so seriously. We can just look at League of Legends North America as a whole, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Did we have coaches? Did we have a really good regimented practicing regimen? No, we didn't. The players dictated everything. To an extent, I'm not sure when that actually ended. It was not that recently, but if the players dictate everything, we're not going to do what's best for us. We're going to do what's best for ourselves. And a lot of times that doesn't really, produce a good team. That just produces like a team that is comfortable making money, being famous. We're not going to beat a region who is actually trying to be the world's best until you start putting like actual having infrastructure there, right? And that means that the players can't have the power. When I quit, the players still had all the power. Like there is no, like you think about it, CLG, let's just say randomly, CLG in 2012, 2013, what if me and Doublelift just left? What if GG just left? All three of us, maybe we're just like, all right, screw hot shot. All three of us gonna leave. You're gonna have to do it with yourself, and then it would just like organization itself would probably just implode.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So that's kind of like, I guess that's kind of so there's really no way we can keep, even if hypothetically if we were stronger than Korea, there's no way we would stay stronger for very long. But I can easily say on the other hand, like saying Koreans not being better than North American players, I say individually, and I've always believed this, that regions like a player can have their own individual talent. It's not necessarily. I would never say a Korean player is better than a North American player. Skill wise, I see no strengths there. I see maybe a better understanding of the metagame. But if I were say to take a random Korean, I don't know, master challenger player against another random North American challenger master player, put them in lane against each other, I would bet that there would not be too much of a difference there.
Really?
Well, put it this way. Let me give you
in pure laning, but
let me
maybe
give you an
meta.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah,
I'll
go-
give
go
you
ahead.
an example. Okay, so obviously, like the main game I come from is Counter-Strike, and Counter-Strike is a game which, even though it isn't entirely about like raw aim and skill, etc., obviously individual skill can have a bigger impact in Counter-Strike than it can in League of Legends because there's so much variability as to where you can aim and the technique you use, etc. Well, in Counter-Strike, historically, Europe generally was always better than North America, but even then, that's kind of unfair. It was really just like Sweden and Denmark, these little countries that did absurdly well in Counter-Strike. Like, if you go through the whole history of Counter-Strike, the most championships ever are all Swedish teams. Like, most of the best players, even into CSGO, so quite recently, Swedish players generally the best. But that, again, is the same concept. Their region was just better, and so they had better competition, etc. If you want to just go individually and talk about pure raw skill, there is actually a player in CSGO right now from North America. His name is Twists, and he plays for Team Liquid. And individual skill-wise, he is legitimately as good as pretty much anyone who plays in all of Europe. Even if those teams, at the moment, they aren't actually better. His team is very good. But even if his team was like the 10th best, it wouldn't mean that all those players in the teams above are better than him. They just are in better teams. So I would even say if you look at most games, same as in StarCraft, you would have the odd Western player who was just amazing individually, Stefano, Cyril now, etc. Like, it's clear that pure skill alone can't be the concept here, because even if you think, like, let's say, for example, through not developing themselves, North American League of Legends players generally aren't as skilled. That's just because they haven't been able to cap out their skill ceiling. If you get the absolute best ones, like Doublelift, like some of the players we've known over the years, clearly these people are as good as the absolute best Korean players, in my opinion, at least. What do you think, Double? What do you think, Loco?
Well, I'll try to tackle both arguments at once. What the thing that Chauster said regarding like getting a random master player from NA and a random challenger or master and then random challenger or master from Korea, like whenever pro players go to Korea, some people, especially like some academy players, they struggle to even make challenger. Like players that are playing in academy in North America, like they go to Korea, like even recently as this winter, and some of them didn't make challenger. So I don't think it's that transferable where if you're a challenger in North America, you'd be around the same level as challenger in Korea, because yeah, the ladder difficulty is much tougher in Korea. And for individual players like Doublelift, I do think Doublelift is exceptional, and he's an exceptional talent in North America, but when you compare him to the exceptional AD carry talent in Korea, I do think Doublelift pales. Maybe not because of, like, I would say like Doublelift genes or maybe his skill level, just the environment in Korea like makes that player so much better. So if Doublelift was someone that could speak Korean, that grew up and was under the Korean system, then maybe he could match like the Korean exceptional talents. But to say like North American exceptional talents can match Korea's exceptional talent, I do think is also false. I think the exceptional talents in each of the region, like Korea definitely shines more.
So to expand upon that, like I actually agree with you. I don't think a master player in NA would reach master in Korea. I think what I was actually trying to say is that if when I say individual skill, I'm kind of taking away the macro aspect of the game. But in a game like League of Legends, macro is probably it's like a very big portion of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that individual skill, and see once again, I'm using the term individual skill, and in your eyes, individual skill encompasses the whole thing, encompasses mechanics and macro play. When I say individual skill, I'm only referencing mechanics. And I think mechanically, a masters and challenger player in NA could easily mimic the same mechanics as a Korean player. The difference is all in the knowledge and how the game is played. So I agree with you there. Well, that's basically what I was saying. I'm just like, dude, a game like League of Legends, the mechanical ceiling is so low. It really is just a thinking game.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I don't think you don't see plays where it's like, oh my god, I can't do that. Like, oh, what League of Legends play could you even say that about? Like, oh, I couldn't flash that. Like, yeah, you could. you probably could have done every single play. You know, most plays you've ever seen, you could have done it had you known how, kind of like had some knowledge beforehand, right?
Yeah. To dissect that a little, what Chauster means is, and I actually do agree with him on, is like, let's say Faker does like what's like a infamous Faker play? Oh, like the dead out play. So if someone was
out there, that's like, I think that's an exception.
Okay,
for
but
sure.
I'll take a crack at it. If someone told you, okay, so when Ryu jumps in here, make sure you W out, and Ryu's gonna flash after you, make sure you flash out before he gets the auto off. Faker had all that somewhat planned to know when he W's in, I need to flash out immediately. Whenever he chases after me, I need to make sure I go W back to the shadow. Like, he had that planned out. And so that's why he could do it like that, like that, like that. If you can read the situation and you can know what's going to happen, it's very easy to play League of Legends. And that's where a lot of the mechanical skill comes in. These players have been in this situation thousands of times, 2,000 times. Like, so they know how to play out that situation perfectly, and they can mechanically execute that. Where, like, a normal player would not expect some of the things coming in, or even have the knowledge of, does he have his flash up right here? What kind of cooldowns does he have up? And be able to calculate all that. That's where I think individual and like the mechanical skill comes in. And to touch a little bit more on what Chauster said, I do think there is a mechanical difference between top tier talent in North America versus top tier talent in Korea. And a lot of the mechanical differences comes from playing versus other like incredibly skilled mechanical talent. That's why like nowadays stuff like the Mad Life hook or the insect kick is super regular, because we play versus that. We also practice that, and we know how to do it, and we know how to play against it. Where if you play versus insane players all the time, and you have insane mechanical players like doing insane mechanical things to you, you either have to adapt or you're not able to play. So yeah, like I rambled a little bit there, but mechanical skill is a lot about knowing what's going to happen in like a small isolated moment, and knowing all the factors and being able to play against it.
Chauster, maybe maybe Loco conflated in his head what Hot Shot and Doublelift. I know they definitely said it on that State of the League episode. Maybe you weren't on that episode. Maybe he's conflated it with you just thinking he isn't good. Because at that time when you first went to Korea and Loco had gone back and he'd made this MIG team and he'd, you know, OGN just got rolling in 2012. Did you actually think Koreans were good when you got there? Like, did you think that it was too soon to have caught up immediately, basically?
So I don't think I put a timeline on it. If you're thinking from my perspective, it's kind of a unique perspective. I don't think most people have talked about it, but there was a New Egg tournament probably late.
This is at the end of 2011, the online one.
Yeah, I think it was late 2010, early 2011, and we had almost lost to Koreans who were playing with 150 to 200 ping. So I would probably be one of the first people to say, like, you know, given them obviously better ping, they practiced as much as we do at the time. Yeah, our infrastructure was just shit, right? But given them better ping, we might have already lost.
Whoa!
So if the Koreans had better ping, we could have already lost. So I really, once again, just going back to the comment, I really don't think I guess I could have said it, but I know also I remember any talk shows I've done. Like, I think you just referenced the show. I don't normally talk on shows.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe
back in the day. So I don't know if I said that.
Okay, maybe that comment never happened. That was a fluke. But you definitely had a negative perspective of Koreans and how good we were. Because
I think maybe you have that perception is because you were trying to tell us how to fast push, which is Korean made us, is just literally some way to play the game. At the time, North Americans, we kept freezing. And the counter to freezing is you could just shove some pressure in the lane. Basically, you disrupt the lane phase. Your farming is, you take control of the game. And I think that was what you learned in Korea after having played in North America. And when you came back to North America, you wanted to bring this style of play.
Well,
right? And it just I don't think this. Yeah, I guess don't go on.
All right, so for me, and like I guess like generally looking at North America, when we actually beat you guys in OGN Invitational, maybe it was just a comment back then, but both you and Double said that was a fluke, and next time we play, like, we're gonna be better. And I remember when you guys first came for OGN, like it was still like an incredibly huge deal, like having CLG participate in OGN, not OGN Invitational, the actual very first OGN. I think it was OGN 2012 spring. CLG, I'm not sure who the decision maker was, did not want to scrim any of the Korean teams. And I mean, I asked you guys, like, what the hell? Like, why do you not want to scrim us? And the reasoning was, we're better than the Koreans, and we don't want to scrim Koreans to teach you guys like how to play. And the initial first week plays happened where I think CLG went 0-2, and then after that, CLG was open to scrimming Korean teams. So I think initially, like North America, especially CLG, had like a very, very negative view on how good the Koreans were, or how much we've caught up, because you guys wouldn't even scrim us when you came to play in OGN because you thought it would be giving us way too much info, and it would be helping us way too much.
I definitely remember this. It definitely wouldn't have been the second time, because after we lose, I don't think after we lost the first time coming back, we could have that mentality. It doesn't make any sense, right?
That's how ridiculous like North American viewpoint was.
I think if anything, that must have happened the first time. Maybe that happened the first time.
First time, I don't think. First time we didn't even get to scrim because like you guys came and then you guys almost played immediately. It was like a very short 3-day window. I think the tournament was 2 days, and then you guys got in a day or 2 days before we actually played.
So the second time is when we played. I don't know, this is so bad. It's really hard for me to remember my history. Second time is when we played you guys in the quarters.
No, you lost to Blaze in the spring one, and you lost to Frost in the summer one. But Loco wasn't on Frost at the time, so.
Honestly, my memory is not good.
We don't have to dig into it.
I definitely remember the mentality. Mm-hmm. The mentality is true, but I don't even know if it applied to Koreans. I really don't. Because I remember arguing a long, long time ago in IRC. It was probably to Wicked or something. I was just like, if you're at the top of the chain, and you're the best, you have a stranglehold, and you're significantly better. At the time we were, and this is 2010, it's not even 2012, this is years before what you're talking about. It was just an opinion I had. That's why I can identify with that thought process. Like, yeah, if you're the best of the best, and everyone else is like years behind you, you practice them, they're just going to get so much better. They're just going to get better. But I don't remember applying that in Korea. I really don't. But
what about this then? So when you're talking here and you're describing like the fact that, okay, in theory, you know, mechanical abilities aren't overwhelming in League of Legends. You know, in theory, even some of the best players would be replicable if someone like could let someone else control their body. You know, it's not like an NFL throw that some quarterback can make that you just can't make because you're not physically capable. You know, This seems to tie into how you saw yourself as a player, because there's a lot of quotes that you have over the years that sound really arrogant, like, you know, just do everything I tell you or something, or like everything I say is right. Or it was, I think, the classic one, right? The one where they made the little book meme of it. But it is true. If people go back, and there used to be this famous thread on the CLG website, which was like an AMA that you kept running for a couple of years at least. I remember reading through it. There was thousands of responses in this AMA. And a lot of them, like some of them were just one sentence answers, but some of them would give people in-depth information about things. And you certainly seem to be someone who, in an era which people might remember, the saying back then was like, smash lane, smash the game. And people were just trying to like get a good matchup, get some kills in the lane, and then because they were coming from the world of being a solo queue player, they thought they would win the actual pro match. But even back then, I remember in early season 3, I did an interview with you where you said a line along the lines of like, League of Legends isn't even a game about champions and kills. It's a game about like minions and towers or something, was your line back then, which people wouldn't realize. That's actually very far ahead of people thinking about like macro concepts generally. So were you always someone who thought along those lines in League of Legends? How did that come about?
So I think for me personally, I'm just a player who I look at everything. I try to look at it rationally. I try to think about it objectively. And if I'm able to think about situations objectively, I can improve, right? That the average person is not able to improve. Why? Because they always fault someone. They fault something. For me, I take that away. I put myself in a vacuum and I think, if this happens, what is the best reaction, right? And it's hard enough for the average person to think that way, and because I say it so matter-of-factly, and because I I assume blame. I'm the first person to accept blame. I don't deflect. I think that's weak to deflect. But that's why I just accept it immediately. There's no argument. If I fucked up, I'm just gonna say it. I messed up. Okay, let's move on. If someone makes a mechanical misplay, you don't cry about it for 10 minutes saying, "Oh my god, you didn't hit your skill shot." Blah blah blah. You just move on. It's over. You know?
Didn't it tilt the fuck out you playing in a team with Hotshot and Synth? And isn't that exactly the sort of shit they were arguing about like every single game?
But that's the thing. This is God. That's such a good thing to bring back. God, so many bad memories or great memories, the best memories, and this is why everyone has such a terrible like image of me. Is because like I'm on a team with people who deflect. Okay, it's Hotshot, it's Saint Vicious, and then Doublelift, who can't even lane, can't do anything, right? So I'm constantly. So what happens in the game? Like, what's my image on this team? I'm always yelling at Doublelift. I'm always yelling at him. I'm just like, oh my god, blah blah this, blah blah that. We're in our own little world, yelling at Doublelift. Scrims happen, which is also weird too, because I remember scrimming in Korea, and specifically, there's one incident where I bring it up because it's such a funny memory. We have the replay. We see Hotshot go in as a Mumu, and he gets his blue buff stolen. And I'm looking at it, and we're just like, why didn't you just smite it? Something simple. And we must have argued for an hour in a circular argument where it was just like, I can't. It was impossible, quote unquote, impossible. Okay. We have the replay. We have every single person saying you should have smited right here. And Hotshot, we have Hotshot looking at it and saying, nope, he just wouldn't agree. He would not admit it. He just said, nope, it was impossible.
And unfortunately, he owns the team, so.
And I mean, that's just what happens, right? You're in a
team, right?
There's no coach, right? And then what happens when the players bring it upon themselves? The easiest way is just to give up, right? You're just like, fuck it, I don't care. Fine. Like, that's why it's so funny. Like, I think in hindsight, at the time I didn't really read Reddit, and I didn't really read people's comments. But I remember probably months or years after I would read, and then people were always like, man, Chauster is such a terrible teammate. Blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. I mean, the alternative is I could be the best teammate in the world. I could just ignore everything, come back a few hours later, play coach, then go on, like, literally take the hours out of my day to improve my team just because they're a bunch of children, and then go on about my day. You know, like, I think realistically, it's really hard to ask someone to do that much. On it, like, I'm in a house with 5 guys.
I think we were also way too young to be able to.
Yeah, it's like I was the only one who graduated college. I had some semblance of responsibility. These guys can't even wake up to go to LCS studio on time. I remember having to impose a fine, and people would get fined every week. People would get fined every week because they could not wake up on time to go to the studio. They'd be like, "Where is this guy? Wake him up already!" And we're like, "Oh shit!"
That happens in 2018 and 2017.
Yeah,
also.
And it still happens. It happens all the time. It's just kind of embedded in gaming culture, right? It's like, dude, you can't wake up to go to the damn studio. What were you doing, dude?
I did always think, though, that was the one area where esports, like with its past where it was a hobby and we were all doing these things for fun, has got a really like poor sort of transition over to being a real like job and a profession. Because even to this day, most pro gamers I know, as soon as they get back home and they're not at an event, they just immediately switch to like the gamer sleeping cycle where you just stay up till like 4 a.m, you're eating like trash food. But then what they don't realize is if they go to an event and 2 days later they're playing on LAN, some of those games start at 10 a.m. Like you've got to, like, that's like going to another continent, even if you're like in the same city, like you were sleeping the opposite sleep schedule to that dude. Like you're going to be wrecked. There's no way you get, like, I remember an early League of Legends tournament, right? I came along, it might have been like IPL or something. One of those ones where you might have to play all day because it's a double in bracket. I came along and in match 1 at 10 a.m, Dyrus is drinking a fucking full sugar Red Bull, just like, and I go to him like, are you going to be all right? And he goes, like, yeah, why wouldn't I be? And I was like, well, we might be playing like 5 more hours yet. He goes, like, all right, nah, we'll be fine. It's like, and he was obviously dead about 6 hours later. You imagine, like, can you imagine if you have to play 8 hours after that, you'd be dead.
A lot of people that aren't Korean don't know this, but Insect delayed his debut on OGN for about 6 months because the first time he was supposed to debut, he missed the bus that was supposed to take him to OGN because he lived far away. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't call anyone. So he's like, oh my God, I missed the bus. I guess I'm just not going to show up. And he was too nervous and shy to call anyone. So it was like, and OGN's broadcasted on TV. So there's 4 of his teammates like random, like sitting in a booth and 1 booth missing. And like 15 minutes after, they're like, yep, this is going to be a forfeit. One of the players didn't show up. And this player is going to be banned for a competitive season or competitive for the entirety of the tournament. And that was Insect. That's why he got delayed. Like he delayed his debut by like 1 OGN season because he didn't fucking show up to the match.
Yeah, it's kind of like that same thing happened to us at MLG Anaheim. We were supposed to get DQ'd. We were late. But luckily, we were playing against CLG EU. And if CLG EU agreed to DQ CLG NA, that would be that's kind of funny, right? Imagine that kind of world where your boss's team, CLGNA, doesn't show up. CLGU sitting there, and they're just like, "Do we DQ these guys?"
No, what's more ridiculous about that is exactly. Think about how mad. This is how bad esports was back then. So a European top team had to not file a disqualification because their own boss was on the other team and hadn't turned up on time. Like that's how absolutely fucked esport. Like imagine some story like that from the NFL or something like. It's outrageous. I've got a question for you before I forget, Chauster, which is this. When you described a lot of like the things going on in the early days of CLG, well, I mean, like you say, at the time you were just a player and then it was a bunch of good players and you started making tournaments, there wasn't like a set thing of someone sitting down like, right, here's a whole contract for 4 years and you're going to do this role and get this amount, it was changing over time, right? Obviously there were some crazy moves back then, like Hotshot GG doing a role swap. You did some role swaps yourself. But I have one question for you because I don't care what anyone says. When I look back on this one, Chauster, this is one of the rare moves where I could have told you this from day one is not going to be a move that will work. There's a lot of moves that's like, give him a chance, right? Why do you think you could get a guy called Locodoco?
Oh my God.
Who's already a bad influence, like bad, like bad attitude player, as AD carry, the most egotistical role in League of Legends. Let him role swap to support and then put him with Doublelift. The guy you've just explained just didn't know anything about the game, and somehow this lane was going to work out. What was the why was Locodoco brought to CLG?
Wait, before Chauster speaks on it, I will say my 2 cents, and then Chauster can say his 2 cents. Okay, so a lot of people don't know this because me and Double aren't good friends anymore, but me and Double used to be best of friends. We used to be really, really close. We got really close when Double was here for OGN. Like, there's some video of us, but we talked about League of Legends all the time because we both played AD carry. We talked about that all the time. I'm going to preface this. I've never said this story publicly. There's sometimes I've said it on streams, but I'm going to fucking say it. So, after StarTale, SKT reached out to me to make their team. And I really considered heavily joining SKT. The team I wanted to join the most was KT, but KT obviously was full, and SKT is like a legendary figure in esports. So I was considering this SKT offer.
This is before they had a team for anyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is before they had a team. So before I got to join SKT, there was another player that I really, really wanted to join with. I don't even fucking remember his name, but SKT already had a mid lane. They already had a mid laner in mind, and they already had a mid laner in mind. They already had like a top laner in mind. This wasn't Faker. This was other 2 players that I don't remember, and I couldn't join with this player. So I was looking for other options, and Doublelift reached out to me, and Doubles told me I could play solo lane in CLG, either mid or top lane. And I was like, okay, I'd be down to role swap to a solo lane. And lo and behold, I was not able to swap to a solo lane, and I was supposed to play support. And I was very angsty about it. I definitely did not put in the work I should have, but there was a lot going in my life. I didn't make the best choices I should have, but also joining CLG, their circumstances were very different than what I was initially told. Chauster, you can have your 2 cents.
So good thing I don't remember much. I don't remember. I really don't. From my memory, I don't remember having you join the team as a solo lane player. I don't think. I really don't think
that's what Double told me would happen. And
God,
then
you can't trust Doublelift, man.
And then by the time I committed and turned down other offers, it's like, well, you're gonna be playing support.
Okay.
Baited easily.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you ever would have played mid lane because I think GG was still playing.
GG was still playing.
He was pretty bad at that time.
I was transitioning from support at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
you went to jungle.
I would either
you jungle, and then it was Hotshot top and me support.
Hotshot and GG were both still on the team.
Yeah.
I was just immediately going to jungle and you were support. I don't think there was no sway, you know. I think that's just how it would have been. I think maybe just, you know, you got bamboozled by Doublelift, you know.
I don't think Doublelift lied. I think Doublelift thought he had more say than he did, and I think you guys were considering
zero say. You should not. I don't think at the time Doublelift should have had not much say.
And I think you guys were considering Hotshot support and probably me top and you jungle. That was probably the other. That was probably the other iteration.
You probably didn't want Hotshot to support him.
Probably just wanted Hotshot to get kicked out. Yeah.
And I also didn't. Oh, I guess.
You wanted Hotshot to retire earlier than he did, right, Chauster? He kind of overstayed as a player, right?
See, it's really hard to say. For me personally, truthfully, I always did have problems with Hotshot as champion pool. But one of the unsaid things is I'm very loyal. I don't think I ever would have. I never, and it's his team. I always thought I see the lines, right? Hotshot's the owner. But I'm just some random guy on the team. I will always say what I have to say, but I never expected Hotshot to retire. Did I want him to retire? No, I don't think so. I always thought about because I think the alternatives were never great at the time. Like let's just say let's let this Nidalee, Cho'Gath, Malphite player retire from top lane. Who are you gonna replace him with? I don't really know who's much better than Hotshot that can replace him. Usually what happens is someone new will come in. You think they have all the answers. You don't even, at the time, we don't even try them out. You usually just say, good, you're on the team. And then you'll find out what problems they have, you know? There is no tryout period.
I
feel like that story actually has inadvertently let us know exactly what did happen here. What happened was Doublelift said something identical to what you just said. He goes like, "Who are we going to really even recruit if we get rid of this Malphite, Nidalee top lane who's not even good anymore?" And then Loco goes like, "I could play top lane." And then Loco goes like, "Yeah, you totally should." And then Loco runs off from his PC, telling all his friends "Oh yeah, I'm joining CLG at top laner." And then Doublelift just says to Hotshot I gave your team spot away. I did one of those nervous laughs he does when he's not being serious. So it was all a joke the whole time.
Which, I don't know if it was a joke, but I think maybe something along those lines where I think probably maybe somewhere along those lines. We'll leave it at that.
Wasn't that one of the problems of NA, like the old school NA teams, where they weren't willing to try out new talent? I do think that was a huge problem with old school season 2, even up to season 3ish, where NA teams weren't willing to try out solo queue talent and weren't willing to give people chances, and they just kept recycling.
For sure, that was a problem. I mean, it's kind of like a catch-22. You have a very young scene. There is no real way to show themselves. The message time and time again has been solo queue is nothing like ranked. You don't get competitive experience by playing solo queue. You have to start a new team. You have to play against these teams, and you have to show yourself. But I'll be the first person to say that you can easily see who's good in solo queue if you were paying attention. There are something I think no one really knows. I think I remember seeing Sneaky at the time, way back before I think he even played any competitive game. I remember seeing Afromu at the time, way back before he ever played any competitive game, and I was like, these guys are pretty good. These guys are pretty good. I'm sure other people could see the same.
Why didn't you give them a shot?
I mean, look, they eventually got their shot. They didn't need someone to give them a shot.
I feel like
they eventually got it. And I think if you're truly that good, you will eventually find your way.
Of course, yeah.
So that's and yes, the scene definitely made it a lot harder. It's obviously always true. If you know the right people, it'll make things 10 times easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you're truly the best at League of Legends, then everyone will know.
Mm.
So,
What do you think, Loco?
Well, I mean, speaking on both sides, like I think CLG definitely could have tried out more of the new players, and CLG was one of the teams where they were very, very against like taking solo queue somewhat seriously even and picking up from solo queue. And as for like new players getting picked up, I mean, if you are good, you will stand out. And as Chauster says, Stinky got a shot, Afro got a shot. Like a lot of the old school players, like nowadays that are still playing, they've been playing for a long time. One thing that stuck with me when Turtle told me was, you know, Loco, I used to play with you back in season 1 and season 2, and you used to flame me. I was like, what? I don't even remember you. And he's like, yeah, I played Janna for you in solo queue all the time, and you flamed me. I was like, damn, dude. Like honestly, I don't even remember. And the thing like that really stuck with me was a lot of these like players that get discovered later like have been playing for a while, and they like you don't notice them until they get discovered. So yeah, there are talent out there. I do think people should nowadays like there's scouts. Like you never go straight from solo queue to LCK or LCS anymore. You go solo queue, like someone scouts you go to an academy team, and from academy team you go to LCS. Like that's not like a problem anymore. But yeah, like back then you needed
The key thing for me is where he says, like, if you actually are the best, like, if you really do have mad skills at the game, whether that's like raw individual skill or just at the game, you just win all your solo queue game, people 100% will notice. And basically, if you don't make it to the top as a pro at that point in time, you were probably just a massive arsehole as a human. Like, that's the only real reason that would keep you back. Because if people can find unscouted talent like that, of course, people want to sign someone like that to a pro team. If this guy doesn't, another pro team does, or a pro team below that, or some team that's on the small team that wants to make a big gamble and get really big. But I will say that's with the caveat. That's only if you're really, really good. There are definitely people, right, who could have been pro players, as in there were other pro players who weren't that skilled, but just had they were in the right place, they were on the right team, they had a year where their champions were in vogue, right? Yes, it's true. You might have been able to be instead of that guy, but at that point in time, if it's that debatable, like you're just an okay player and you could have been, you can't really then complain like, oh, it's unfair, I didn't like that. There's going to be a few people get like the shit role in a team or be the supportive player or whatever, that person I don't think really can complain though. Like that's not the same as being some top talent, that's the same as saying like in the NFL, oh, I could have been like the kicker. It's like, yeah, so could a load of people, but you couldn't be the fucking quarterback, could you? That's the point, that would be my analogy I'd give for that.
Oh, one thing I wanted to ask is when you knew Doublelift was special or like different, or did you even know like playing with Doublelift like all these years, like did you think he would be?
Yeah, you made it sound kind of shit before, like he didn't know anything. Was there sort of like something that made you have faith he could become a really good player?
Oh God. So my opinion is this sounds like shit. Yeah, God, everyone's gonna hate me. The way I thought about it was at the time, they gave me Doublelift. He was starting from like not even like 0. He was starting from like -1. My thought process was, I could have. At the end of the day, when Doublelift became good, and I would say we were undisputedly the best bot lane. It's just so easy for me to say this. There's like zero. There's like no competition.
At what point in time was this?
Let's say I'd say when we lost OG, was it? What the hell was his name? Woong? Was Woong playing bot lane?
If it was you lost to Woong, then it would be Summer. OG
Summer.
Yeah.
I think
Local.
Yeah.
I think during that summer, I think our bot lane had kind of peaked in terms of laning. There's zero competition. There's like zero chance anyone can take us bot lane. There's just nothing.
Did you guys?
By the way, for anyone who doesn't know, because people might already say, but what about Wei Zhao? Wei Zhao didn't get FCZF into his bot lane until after that season, actually.
Honestly, my opinion is just at my prime, there's nothing. There's no one. There's no one that can outlane me back then or ever, for that matter. That's just my tall opinion,
I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion, and I'm glad you're willing to say it.
So was that based then off stuff like lane matchups and understanding of the game?
That had to do with the fact that I actually ventured out of the meta for bot lane supports, I knew all the matchups and we played them all correctly. That's why. And I think most bot lanes they can't say that. I played random shit like Tarek. Totally not meta. Totally garbage. It could be played. You just have to look at the matchup. You think what champions would make sense, and this champion makes sense. Good, we'll play it. And the difference I had with Doublelift at the time is because we had that relationship of literally, like how did this relationship happen? I was training Doublelift for months. Do this, do that, yell, yell, yell. Why didn't you do this? Why don't you do that? So eventually, what happens is Doublelift becomes me eventually, and we would be functioning kind of as a unit. Kind of. I think the goal of any bot lane is to function as a singular unit. I don't think anyone really attains that, especially today. The way people play bot lane is even, I think,
yeah,
it's just so many pussies bot lane. They just don't fight. You just can't, especially with like TPs and stuff. Like a year back, 2 years back, it's it's even less relevant. But if you can become one singular unit, that is the key of bot lane, right? And I think we were very close to that.
Well, people play or go ahead.
And going back to your question about like when did I figure out Doublelift was special? I think he is special for sure, but that wasn't ever my thought process. My mentality, since you're asking me what I thought, was that I could have trained anyone to be Doublelift.
There we go.
Anyone you could have put to me, I could have made him the Doublelift that you see. Yeah. That was my opinion. But obviously, since Doublelift is still around and he's still very good, I would say, maybe Doublelift is really good.
Yeah,
maybe. So I don't know. But hypothetically, what if I had Chaos? I could have maybe trained Chaos to be this good.
Oh my god. So one thing I will give Doublelift so much credit for it was like when he was coming over for OGN Invitational, I did a lot of research on Doublelift and a lot of research on you guys because I really, really wanted to beat you guys. And Doublelift had 3 accounts in like I think top 10 NA. It wasn't even called Challenger back then. It was just like top 10 ladder. And Doublelift had 3 accounts. I think he had the most solo queue games played out of anyone. Doublelift put in a lot of work. So I don't know if I don't think
years. No, what you're saying comes years after I'm out of the picture already.
No, for the OGN original, when you guys are coming over for Invitational, that's when you and Double came over with CLG. When you guys were coming over, Doublelift
he was just playing. He was just playing.
Yes, he put in so much work.
I was still playing with him at the time, and I can tell you, I knew exactly how he was as a player. I knew exactly how he was as a player. He wasn't, it's nothing mind-boggling, nothing special to me. Right? I mean,
do you really think you could have done it with Chaos?
No, actually. And that's only this is different. Once again, let me say why I think this. I played with Chaos actually last year in the Hong Kong. Do you remember this? The Hong Kong throwback match?
Oh, East versus West.
And oh my god, dude, he's like masters in China. No offense, Chaos, if you ever watched this video. I lane with him, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this guy cannot lane. We can't shit on gold players. Like you're standing there CSing, dude. Why aren't you fighting, dude? All I want to do is fight, kill, and this guy just standing there. So that's just and honestly, that is kind of like Doublelift back in the day. Once again, like when I used to lane with Doublelift back in the day, because we had died once in lane. He would not even react. He would just default to farming. It wouldn't even be like, can you outplay them? The answer is yes. If the answer is yes, you do it. But he would just say, no, we can't. We're behind. We got to farm catch up.
Okay, before we touch a little bit more on the Chaos subject, like bot lane changed so much from what it used to be. So like peak season 2, peak season 3, like junglers were weak as fuck. Junglers bought gold per 5 items. They bought Oracle's Elixir. AD carries were much stronger. We would get multiple Dorans, so we would be stronger early. We would buy first item Infinity Edge, and then we would buy Last Whisper. Last Whisper had armor pen, and attack speed. Infinity Edge had crit chance plus boosted your crit, and then we get Phantom Dance there. Like the build path was much smoother, and AD carries were much stronger, and junglers were much weaker. Like Chauster, if you play like that nowadays, junglers are so strong. Like they gank you at level 2, and the damage on junglers are fucking insane. Like electrocute.
No, I mean,
do you still
I mean,
play
I
out there?
understand.
Yeah.
Think back. Come on, man. You talking to me. I understand. You know, like when you're talking about bot lane, you have to talk about it. You take all these factors in hand, right? All these variables, and you just think it's me against the other bot lane. Overall, game after game, who's gonna win, right? It's just if you how well do you actually know the matchup? Junglers obviously are part of the game, but you take all those into account. It doesn't matter what era of the game you played in. All I can say from that is you just kind of confirm my point that fighting and being good at laning is less relevant. There's
It
not
is less
much,
relevant than it
there's
was
not
before.
much. It's not as much rewards as there was back in the day. But I would always argue it's better to completely know your matchup and be able to fight and kill and scale back than not knowing at all, and you don't even have the knowledge to go into that skirmish to begin with, which you won't in this day and age. Which is why I'm saying, back in the day when there are a lot more rewards for fighting and in lane kills. That's kind of like what I'm saying about, like, that's why, like, if I compare laning back in the day to what it is now.
So one thing I do want to talk about is Chaos. Have you guys all seen like the Chaos clip or seen what happened to him recently?
No, what happened?
How to describe this? Have you seen it, Chauster?
I heard about it, but I've heard about it. You can just go on and explain.
I don't, how do I explain this while being PC? Chaos is
A little crazy.
little crazy.
Did he say something racist or something?
No. I think Just correct me when if I'm wrong. Right? He I don't know why he was streaming. He suddenly started streaming, and he started talking all this existential, I don't know, some BS. How he doesn't have friends or something.
Yeah, how he doesn't have.
He can't have friends anymore, and he's trying to give these random reasons for like why he doesn't have friends. He disowns Dyrus on stream or something. Says something like, I can't have friends, blah blah blah. Honestly, it was crazy talk, so maybe Loco has a little more knowledge. I don't really.
Yeah, like he disassociated himself with all his friends, and then like he's like, mind and body is separate. Like you can kill the body, but the mind can live on, and you can exit your mind. Look at me, I'm gonna do it right now.
The fuck? I think he's watched the movie Videodrome. What's he talking about? Yeah, and he starts trying to meditate.
No, he's like, look, I just exited my body for 3 seconds. Did you guys fucking see that? Like, he just went insane. So, I mean, a lot of people will talk about like Chaos and like the season 2 MVP stuff. Like,
so all I'm going to say is this: if he'd have learned with Chauster might have turned his life all around. Now he might be in a great place. Might have a small business. Might have sort of have his family involved in it. Might be great. Who knows?
Did you think Chaos was the MVP for season 2? And did that award ever happen?
Everyone knows that shit was self-proclaimed. That's why it's such a meme. It's like,
I never was there, so I don't know. But
what happened was this: someone who was just a writer for Riot did a blog post where they talked about season 2 Worlds, season 2 NA Regional, and they just mentioned offhand, like, for me, the MVP has to be Chaos, and it's not even an official title. It's not an award. It's just a person in like a news post putting a bit of flavor text, basically. And for some bizarre reason, Chaos did take that and act as though he'd been given like an official MVP for the entirety of season 2, which doesn't make any sense, obviously.
Yeah, I've known Chaos online for a very long time. He's always been weird. So honestly, to me, it was in his realm of possibility. To me, it was not that far off the scales.
I'll tell you an interesting story though.
I've seen very interesting sides of Chaos over the years, and yeah, it wasn't that surprising.
Doran, before you tell your story, let me tell my quick story. So, young Loco had problems with girls back then, so I asked Chaos, "Yo, Chaos, I like this girl. What should I do?"
And God, you fuck.
And instead of giving me advice, this is what Chaos told me. Well, Loco, I went on a date. Last weekend? And this was when Chaos was in college, and then he goes on a date with the girl, and he tells her, I'm the best at the world at a video game. Literally the best fucking at this video game. What are you good at? And then he's like, I told her that, like, she ended up not liking me. And I, like, at the end of the day, I don't think she was for me. Like, if you're not going to be best at a world at something, then you can't be dating me because I'm best at the world at something. And I was like, holy shit, Chaos is insane. That's when I first started thinking Chaos was insane.
And then you took a breath and went, anyway, as the best Korean AD carry, here's what I think about things. And as usual, you know, the mental effect, you didn't observe it in yourself, what you saw so easily in others, right, Loco? Don't worry, that happens, mate. It happens. No, here's the story I was going to say, though, is that I'll stand up for Chaos. I'll be the one to take a hit here, okay? Because even though there were certain areas, like, for example, yes, if he talked about himself, he was quite delusional. But to be fair, a lot of pro players I've known in esports in most games have like private opinions about how good they are and how good their teammate is and how bad their rival is that are ridiculous. And they would never say in public, by the way, because the one thing they sort of get is like, even though they know, well, this is what I actually think, they're somehow usually grasp enough to know it. But if I say this publicly, people are going to think I'm a moron. So they don't do it normally. But I will say this to Keox's credit, because a lot of people don't know the story of how he like went out of the scene. So people know he got fired from TSM and he got cut on that Game Cribs episode. And at the time, he obviously did like just sort of wig out a bit because he went on that like mini tour of China, if you remember. And then he came to stay with Monty for the season 3 spring finals of OGN, the one that MVP Ozone won over Blaze. Because I went to that finals and I stayed with Monty at the same time Chaos was there. And so at the time I got to spend like a week or so just talking to Chaos, like hung out with him, etc. I actually once wrote a column about this and people completely misunderstood the point of this column I made, right? Which was when he got kicked in that sense. There were some people know this piece of trivia, which is one of the teams that said to Chaos when he got kicked out of TSM, you could join us, was the team that became Cloud9, basically. This is before they had Sneaky. Like that, Sneaky and Meteos were like the last 2 pieces they put together on that team. And so at the time, before they'd like secured Sneaky, they said to Chaos, just come and join our team. Like, we're going to be really good. Hopefully we get into LCS. And he actually told me, even though at the time he said this, Cloud9 had just gone into LCS and they were tearing it up and they were like the best team in the league, he actually did say that there was no point joining them because even if they were the best in NA, he'd already done that with TSM. And he saw that if you were the best in NA, that still wasn't anything close to like winning worlds or anything like that. So he said, even though I couldn't have known they'd be this good, like there would be no point actually joining. Like I'm not wrong in that. And then he even told me, this is the detail that's going to blow your mind, Loco. And he told me, he said some of this in my interview with him, but not all of it. Like he said, the reason why I know it would be a waste of time joining any NA team, even if it was the best, even if it was TSM again, is because when I was in China and I went to all these different team houses, I saw all the different players in China playing in solo queue. And one of the players he references is he said, I saw this guy, Uzi in China, who's like 14 or something. And he was just like, his CSing is better than anyone in the world. And this is before Season 3 Worlds, Loco. This is before Uzi's done anything in the West. Like, nobody fucking knows this guy. So, as much as I definitely Keox, like a lot of people, was pretty delusional, and because it was the early days of esports, you could be a bit wacky and get by, you know. He did have some points on which he was actually, he could be prescient, you know, he could be lucid for a moment on some of his points.
Well, dude, the Chaos, the NA comment is so funny that there's no point to joining an NA team because even if they're best in NA, like I've already done that, he ended up like going back to join like an NA challenger team. Like
obviously after that, yeah. But he went like a year or so after that.
Yeah, like Chaos, and he also tried out for Coast, like Chaos isn't here to defend himself, so I don't want to shit talk him. But
well, I'll say this, Loco. He's an example of someone, and there's a lot of people like this in League of Legends who don't realize that. I always tell people the magic number is 1 year. If you go out of being a pro player for 1 year, most people who are current pros won't respect you. Like, unless you literally come back and you're instantly like wrecking them in the game, or you're like so amazing on like one aspect, they will just think, oh, you used to be good ages ago. There's a reason you weren't on a team, you know, like you're just not good anymore. And the problem is, if you're a pro player, you're thinking like, well, I was only a year ago. I was one of the best. What are you talking about? Like, people's memories are real quick to disappear on that. And so the problem Keox had, like his timing's the worst ever on this, because obviously he got kicked at the very end of the first ever LCS split. So in his mind, he's still thinking, what are you on about? Last year I won all those championships with TSM. And it's like, bro, we're in the LCS era now. Sorry, but no one cares about like what you did like a year before, 2 years before. You know, at that point in time, he probably has a mad expectation of what he thinks his own ability is, Local, that no one in the city, like as if you're saying Coast now, this is when Coast was bad. Like, they're not even going to respect him unless he's amazing, you know. He's going to think, I'm Keox, dude. It's like, who gives a fuck, you know? Sadly, that's just the world we're in, right?
Chauster, do you regret not continuously playing?
That's a loaded question. So let's see. Do I like just being relevant? I guess just being a pro, basically pro in league, right?
Yeah, pro in league, or even just staying in the scene to coach or stream.
I mean, seeing how big the scene...
You could have done coaching for a long time, right? You could have been someone who could have done that.
It's really hard to say. I mean, if you think back about when I did originally quit, it's late 2013. I did think about alternatives. I think So at the time, what happened was I think I stopped playing the game. I became shit. I was really out of practice, right? I just stopped playing it. My motivation was an all-time low. Everyone knows CLG's like, hey man, we're gonna try some people out. And when that happened, you know, I'm me, right? My pride is too much. I'm just gone. I don't care. So what happens afterwards? They're like, oh, it didn't work out. We're gonna let you keep playing, but we're gonna give you a salary cut. Of course I'm gonna say no and I'm gonna quit, right? There's no way I'm gonna live for that, right? So my intention there was like, well, do I play on another team? Do I coach or do I just quit? And it was a very easy decision for me to make at the time because I had already, my motivation had been a very long time. You know, I haven't been, I think if you look back on your own interviews, you know, I think you interviewed Scar, you interviewed Saint Vicious, maybe 2012, 2013. They're just like, we never see Chauster play the game. I just completely stopped playing the game. So I quit in late 2013, but there were no coaching gigs available at the time. No one had money. I would not coach. I will not coach for like a small amount of money. That was my thought process. Why would I go from being a top tier league player, quitting, taking a huge pay cut to be a coach somewhere where the infrastructure wasn't already set? It's just weird, right?
I've got a related question then, okay, because I actually, at one of the first times I talked to people like Hotshot was during the first season of LCS, season 3. So it was one where you were still there. And this was at the time where obviously for the summer split, they did get a coach. As I referenced earlier, they got Monte Cristo as the coach. But before that, they had no coach. And I actually remember when I talked to some of them at the time and they were like, yeah, we want to get someone, but you know, like we don't know who we'd get, etc. I'll just say it outright, Chauster. People said that you were one of the main people who was resistant to getting a coach, and that you had an infamous line that you'd said that was something along the lines of like, "How is some like bronze shitter going to tell me how to play the game if I'm like, you know, a challenger or whatever?" Then there was no challenger maybe back then. But you get the gist of it. Weren't you someone who was kind of against the concept back then?
So I actually, this will sound bad. So yeah, no. Yes, I was one of the ones who said that. I think at the time, this is actually a very funny and relevant example because this is even back in like 2012, I think. Hotshot had wanted to get Tony, who was CLG head coach, as an analyst. And we were very resistant. Me and Doublelift were very resistant, and I think
he basically, I actually talked to him about this, and he basically told me he would send in loads of info, and then you guys just didn't read it or something.
Well, this is the thing is so bad because if you truly know your lane and you truly know your game, you already know everything this guy's gonna say. I already know everything that Hotshot read about his lane. I knew. But Hotshot, it's one of those things where you need someone else to tell you that is not in your team. This is also why I was so supportive. I was very supportive when Monty was our coach, despite I didn't really believe he had the game knowledge. I really don't. Like in the grand scheme of things, his game knowledge was not that great. But to me, it didn't matter. I had gotten to a point where I finally understood how come our team couldn't improve. We have all the answers. You have 5 players who live and breathe the game, kind of. Some of us didn't at the time. We kind of lived and breathed the game. And we understand it at a very high level. But the thing is, when someone from your own team tells you to do something, you're not going to listen to it. You're not going to say, that's right. But if it came from someone else whose job is to be objective and their job is to point out things and help you improve, it's very easy to digest that information. And that's why like, I guess what I'm saying is, would you believe like a gold player could be a better coach or analyst than a challenger player? I think objectively the answer is always no. There's no fucking way. That's just my point. That's my only point. But if I were to say, would this gold player have any value on an organization with zero infrastructure? I also agree that they would have value. But at the time, I would say that I did not really grasp the whole picture of CLG as an organization. I didn't really understand that Hotshot was so unreceptive to receiving feedback from within his own team. He needed this from an outside source. And this all kind of just ties into needing infrastructure. You need it. You don't like you have these brilliant players in other games. Brilliant. Maybe let's just say they're the top tier players in their game, in their position. Do you really think that someone else can coach them at a macro or a micro level about their own position? They know more than anyone else in this whole world about their position, right? But you can at least feed them like macro coaching concepts, right? Like some other stuff like that is what I'm saying.
So my 2 cents on this is I've been a coach for 3 years, 4 years, and I've always been able to coach players that are like much better than me, like Bjergsen, Smoothie, like Dardog. Like just because like you're excellent at the game, like it doesn't mean you know everything. Like League of Legends is so much information, and you need to know so much things. So like when a player is good, I feel like their knowledge is very in depth, but very narrow a lot of times, and you can fill a lot of the gaps and like stuff they might not know, and like help them with a lot. I do think so. Like even though you might know your matchups really well, like you don't play these matchups all the time. Like having someone like Tony who could like research matchups or like bring up champions that you haven't played before, wouldn't that have been helpful? And like isn't that like what coaches are doing nowadays, like coaching players that are like challenger and at the very top tier of their games?
So I agree. I agree with everything you said, and I agree. But my example would be let's just pretend that this player already he's done more than everyone else. You play more matchups than everyone else. You're the top of that matchup. You're the top of that for anything you're saying, right? But I guess like that's just kind of like a moot point. I guess no, I agree completely. I think coaching definitely helps. But just to bring back against my point, it was really just saying, kind of defending myself about the gold shitter argument that Gordon was talking about. Is really just saying like, you know, we were very prideful. It's like 2012. We're just like, how is someone gonna tell us about our own lane? You know, we don't want to pay someone. We don't want to pay someone to come help us. I think, and then that's kind of like my argument. But I 100% believe that having an external set of eyes is always beneficial.
I actually think, though, that the way you explained it there, both sides, like your own internal opinion of why you didn't think like someone like that could be a coach, and then the fact that you didn't become a coach is all connected. Because what I always used to tell people back in the day, coming from other esports games, and I myself was obviously aware, like Loco, of the Korean infrastructure, and that literally, obviously, every single team has coaches there and has coaching staff, and obviously some of those coaches are terrible. Like some of them don't necessarily know what they're doing, but the people still treat them with respect, and they have to be followed. And if you're just on a coach with a bad team, it's like being on an NFL team that's got a bad general manager. Yeah, you can have a bad team. That's unfortunate. It's your career, though, right? Well, the thing is, the argument I always told people back in the day is, everyone is actually right. Like at the very beginning, the first coaches obviously were terrible. Like no matter how much Monty was trying, he himself had never been a coach before. He was literally the first person to do a job that didn't exist. So like no matter who you are, you're going to be pretty bad compared to, let's say, like once you've got 10 people doing that job, whoever's the best out of that 10, it's probably better than you, the first guy to start. So what I always told people you've got to realize is, by default, they're all going to be pretty bad at the beginning. Like you're going to get very little value. You're only going to get basically what you said, like a fresh set of eyes. That's it. Probably some of the stuff they say is going to be misguided, or they're going to have scouted it for like global world of League of Legends, not your specific team, you know. But the key point I always made was, by having coaches, then you get a pool of people who can compete against each other. And if our coach sucks, we can get the coach of another team that's really good and he proves himself to be good. And then secondly, once you've got a whole bunch of coaches, they will have their own ecosystem because of demand for coaches, which means that the amount you pay your coach will go up, and people will take coaches from other teams if they're good. So eventually, as bizarre as it sounds, by sort of like bootstrapping it, you get from no coaches and everyone's terrible to like a scene with loads of really good coaches that hopefully we have now, like let's say half a decade later. It's just, I agree with you. The problem is, to be the first teams taking the gamble, it's almost certain you're not going to get that much value out of it, but you just got to kind of do it to get to where you need to be eventually, you know. It's a tough scenario.
It's just you know, as a starting original player, it's really hard to say. It's end of 2013. It's basically like a life changing moment, right? Like, what do I want to do? Do I want to continue with League? Do I want to go back and just be a normie, right?
Mm-hmm.
9 to 5. And for me personally, uh, I just had a lot of pressure to not play games. It came from my parents. My parents didn't want me to really keep playing games. I think my girlfriend at the time also didn't really want me to keep playing games.
Did they
But
not appreciate the aspect of like being the best at something or anything?
I don't think. Well, my parents definitely don't understand. They always think that gaming is a gamble. It's not going to be here
Right.
10 years from now. And to an extent, I also share that belief. Otherwise, I would still be
Sure.
in video games, right? I would still be there if I truly believed. But I don't think I have confidence in my own future in gaming. I'm not saying I think esports will always be there if you have motivation. But for me, I kind of knew at the end of the day, I'm just a video game player. I'm not here to extend the esports scene. I'm not like some of these league players who are like, after they're done with league, maybe they're going to look for the next esports title to extend their career. I'm not that person. I played League because I loved League of Legends. Once I'm done with League of Legends, there's no League of Legends. I just move on with my life. At least that was my original intention. So that's why, like, when I came to make that decision, I was thinking about, like, man, you know, I peaked. I was already, you know, I was at the top of the world, League of Legends. What am I going to do 10 years from now? Work at a fucking back end office making less than I did in my 20s? That was my thought. I don't like that thought. I don't like that if I had a graph of earnings, I would be earning so much more in my 20s. And then suddenly in my 30s, I'm earning less. And in my 40s, like, say if I have my family, I have my kids, I'm be like, hey, children, I'm going to go to the office. You know, I'm just like a manager, not looking down on the role. It just feels weird to me. It's not really what I envisioned. Like, what, I leveraged all this because I was a video games player and I was so desperate to stay in the video games scene that's what I chose to do. And to me, that sounds weird. And that's why I just kind of scaled back. I looked at it and I was like, can I do this safely without a gamble? But I think anyone will agree with me that in esports, especially back in 2013, before all the money came in, before it was as popular as now, it was a gamble to pursue, especially from the time I quit was like probably, I would say probably one of the worst times to quit. I was just in a really bad spot.
With LCS coming in, not franchising, just regular LCS, didn't that kind of ease your mind at all?
No, because LCS money was shit back then, late 2013. Like,
Yeah.
between that salary, yeah, you know, we don't have expenses. We're still getting paid okay, but compared to what players are making now, we were making nothing.
Yeah, we're making nothing.
So compared to what players make now, we were making nothing. And, you know, I just thinking about, like, you know, you always have doubts too, because I knew at the time, like, what, I had a girlfriend. I prioritized that relationship. Maybe I shouldn't have. That's one of my greatest mistakes, I think.
Oof.
So that because of that, I knew you can't go from that position to suddenly having someone remind you, like, hey man, you're on the chopping block. You're Chauster. You used to be up here. You run the org. I basically, like, iron hand of the organization, right? That's me. Suddenly you're on the chopping block. Can I regain that? Can I truthfully regain that motivation? I don't believe that. I don't really believe I can, you know? I don't necessarily want to at that point. You're kind of in a catch-22 spot where the people you trusted the most kind of put you in this weird position to begin with, right? So I feel like I just had to quit. I definitely had to quit CLG, and I wouldn't stomach my pride to join a lesser organization. That's why I just had to quit.
And I've been in a similar spot a lot of times before, but I really, really love League of Legends and I really love the video game theme. So I know you didn't mean it in a negative way, but I was desperate enough to, like, always, like, get back to League of Legends and try to still be in the scene. But I can see from like a different perspective. Yeah, like going from like up there to down there and still giving and still trying to be in the scene and still working to be in must have been really rough.
Yeah, I don't mean it. I don't mean it in like a negative way. Like, oh, like you trying so hard to be in the league scene. Like, look, some people love the league scene. You know, I get it. But to me, I started playing League. I was in college. I played League as a hobby, just like any other game. I just played. I just played to be the best. You get good. It's kind of like a natural cycle, you know. It's like at least that's my unique personal take on it. You get good at a video game, and then after the game is done, I move on. But it's weird that I meet people in League of Legends who, because of League of Legends, this is now your life moving forward. And I definitely understand from like a Korean's perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It's like it's somewhere you would desire to be, right? But I'm from North America. I have traditional Asian American parents. No one still to this day understands like gaming. You guys all kind of understand what I'm talking about. I like what I do now. I think you eventually want to talk about like I'm actually a CPA. I do taxes. Right? So I work with accountants. These guys don't even play video games, man. They don't watch streams. They're like, I don't get it. I don't, it's just it's to the normal world, it's still very out there. And I'm still very much a part of that normal world as it is.
Sure. I think that all makes sense, by the way. It's one of the reasons why I actually think a lot of the, like, I'll give you a very, very quick version of this like concept is like whenever people always tried to talk about how Western pro gamers weren't as good as Koreans because, say Koreans practiced 16 hours a day or Koreans took fucking 2 weeks holiday in an entire year, or even in the off-season Koreans practice. I always used to tell people, yeah, but the part you aren't realizing here is I actually wouldn't want, even if I could make them, to make Western players play like that, because their quality of life for what they expect would go so down that even if they won, it probably wouldn't be worth it, because what they value in their life, like having a girlfriend, having a cool car, having a hobby that you can do, things that they value quite highly, will actually have to be taken away in order to be better than this Korean guy, because the Korean guy's doing that. Like, he's given up all that stuff in his life. So along the similar lines, whenever it comes to like esports and stuff like that, like the best example is when people talk about why aren't there more girls? It's like, I wouldn't recommend, like, when they say we've got to get more girls to play esports, like, okay, play games, yeah, because games are fun. I wouldn't suggest anyone become a pro gamer in any game, like, unless you really enjoy the most boring shit ever, which isn't playing the game, it's practicing the game. That is the most boring shit imaginable, unless you're one of the very few people that actually likes to do that. If you like to do that, do it. It's for you. That's the right thing. Something's calling you. If you have any doubts whatsoever, it's not for you. Like, you're not going to be able to handle it. Imagine doing that 12 hours a day. Like, no one would want to be forced to do that. That's a fucked up lifestyle.
Speaking of girls, Chauster, this happened a long time ago, and I need to get down to this. What happened to? No.
It depends on what you're gonna ask. I'm just gonna preface. All right, go on.
What happened in the Girls for LOL tournament after there was proof that you stood in for one of the girls, and Hotshot said he would investigate? This happened way back, I think, in like 2012, 2013, and Hotshot said he would bring up the evidence after and tell everyone what happened, but Hotshot never got around to it. So what the fuck happened in the Go for LOL tournament where
that's something
you were the suspected ringer?
That's an easy question. So Girls for LOL tournament. So basically what happened is we're at the finals, and I think some girls asked me to play. And I was just like, whatever, sure. I'm gonna shit on this other girl team, And the funny thing is, I actually answered this. I had like an AMA on Reddit when I retired. I answered this there too. And then Doublelift was supposed to play with me too. So we were both supposed to jump in because I think his girlfriend at the time was also participating in the tournament. And it was supposed to be me, Doublelift, and I think 3 other girls against 5 other girls, right? Doublelift was sleeping. He didn't fucking wake up. So whatever, I played with myself. Okay. And I shit you not, 5 dudes on the fucking other team. Fucking guarantee it, dude. 100% guarantee the shit. I fucking guarantee it, dude. These guys were high low players playing very not normal champions. Do you see, like, I don't want, God, it just sounds so sexist saying it, but like, it's so meme worthy. Like there's a fucking like trimmed main. Do you see female trimmed mains? I don't see very many, especially not back in 2012. Vegar mains that were, and this is old school Vegar, very good. Like a lot higher skill champion, like skill cap Vegars. It's just like, dude, there's 5 fucking dudes on their team, and I'm the only one who gets complained. That's just funny. But yeah, basically, yeah, I subbed in. But the funniest thing was that I knew some of the guys too. I knew who it was. You could just tell by the champion pool who the fuck that was. You know, like I know that's you. Well, that's whatever.
Okay, I had to ask the question because someone tweeted about it recently, and I was like, damn, yeah, what did happen? I remember Hasha saying say something about it.
No,
yeah,
Hasha knew. You know, what are you gonna say? It's just some crappy like Girls for Law tournament.
Mhm.
I mean, it's funny though. Think about it. Yeah, I was just like, dude, there's like 5 guys in the team.
Should we do some viewer questions then, Loco?
One question, and then we can go over to viewer question. If you could like give like a short, like a 1-minute video message to like the 2010 version of yourself or 2009 version of yourself that said like, hey, League of Legends is gonna be the shit, like play onward, like would you have still played? And if you still played, what kind of level do you think you'd be at right now?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that question real quick?
So like 2009, like you can send a video message to yourself, like a 2-minute version.
What advice would you give to the young Chauster just starting League of Legends? Like, would you tell yourself, keep playing, you know, the money's going to be worth it?
Mhm.
Don't pick up that shit Korean guy as the support player in 2012.
Very easy. I just want to say it. Maybe I would just say, I would just tell myself, like, don't get into a relationship. I think.
Oh, there we go. Nihilism.
I think that would have been the key. No, it's
Tell him,
really, it's. I think
love will kill you.
Crumbs kind of touched upon it, but everyone thinks he's just memeing, right? But think about it from the, I don't remember if someone gave a serious response on this. Like you take the stereotypical gamer, stereotypical pro gamer from North America. I'm not talking about Korea. I don't know how Korean culture works if you're good at video games and you're growing up in school. But if you're growing up in North America and you have what it takes to be a pro esports player, chances are you were not too social or had too many relationships growing up. So I mean, the moment you have a relationship, I'd say more pros tend to lean towards holding on to that versus taking care of their career, which they really should be appreciating because they're in a very special place in their life, right? So I think what happens to a lot of players, not just me, like this, what are the most prevalent examples? Me, Big Fat Gigi. Those are just two of the names I can just easily mouth off, and I don't think anyone would, argue that we were very much impacted by just having a relationship. And that's probably it.
I've got a take on this one for you. Okay, because as you said, if you haven't heard anyone seriously address it, here's my take on the angle. The problem is, like, the quote that everyone remembers from the Crom Zone was like, girlfriends ruin esports or something along those lines was the gist of it, right? The problem with that statement is, like you're saying here, if you understand the context of where Crumbs is coming from, it's not an invalid premise. Like what he really means is something similar to what you're saying, which is the sort of person, at least up until recently, who became a pro gamer, was probably a massive nerd, probably spent most of their time as a teenager playing video games, which is why they're really good at video games, probably didn't have very much experience with the opposite sex or whatever sex they're attracted to, and definitely wasn't someone who had like proper relationships and was a mature person emotionally, So odds are the girlfriends they're getting when they become a pro gamer, and especially, this is the key context, if it is because they are a pro gamer, as in they get a girl who plays League of Legends or who's seen the LCS before, if that person becomes their girlfriend, this person already is primed to have a bad relationship anyway because they have no experience whatsoever and they're a gamer. And on top of it, because all they did before was just play games all the time, they're also by default going to be the worst boyfriend. They're just going to only be playing games. So I would say this: if you're talking about men in general, there are obviously many men in the world who are like amazing CEOs of companies and entrepreneurs who have wife and kids, you know. And if anything, they go the other way. They just like ignore them and neglect them, and they put all their time into their work. That's why they're like some like Jeff Bezos type guys, like the most rich dude in the world, you know. The problem is this: it's not that like girls themselves are the problem. They're the catalyst that allows men who already weren't capable of having a full-time relationship and a full-time career. The sort of man who couldn't do both of those is going to be ruined by having a girlfriend. But this is the problem. So while on the one hand, I'm not putting the blame on girls there. Like a lot of the girls in this scenario might not even have done anything wrong. It might have just been a cool girl who's the girlfriend. And then this guy he's never had any hot girl before. He's fallen all over himself to do everything for her. Oh, I don't know if I want you to play in that next tournament. Right, I won't play in it. You know, that sort of person is he's a bit of a bitch anyway. So yeah, he has been ruined by girls. This is the problem though. I can't just leave it there because at the same time, this is the part that like feminists don't want you to address. There are definitely women in the world that I have met and seen, and especially in gaming, where some people who were the girlfriend of a pro player who part of what they got off on, like as a person, their ego was like being able to control this famous person. And if they could actually say to him, even though they met him through League of Legends, I don't know if you should play League of Legends so much, you know, I think you should spend more time with me, maybe become like a streamer, you know. Some of those girls, quite frankly, actively ruined people's careers because what they were doing was being very selfish to their own demands and they didn't think of what was best for the player. So if they broke up with that guy a year later, that player's shit out of luck. He's not a pro now, or he's not a top player, or he did something bizarre with his career. So the problem with that is, like, as you can see there, there's clearly it's not girls that ruin things, it's not pro gamers. It's some mixture of the two, and it's very special cases of the two. When that Venn diagram perfectly meets in the middle, that's the pro gamer who will just fuck his whole career up.
Okay, so we're going to continue with our conversation. You guys can start leaving viewer questions, and we'll ask Chauster, Dorian, and myself some viewer questions. Ask good questions. We're not going to take like weird-ass questions. So Chauster, the second part of the question was if you could give that message to yourself, so you give your message, don't get into relationships, League is going to be worth hella money. How good do you think you would be nowadays if you kept playing?
Man, you're asking me that question.
Yeah, I have to.
Of course, I think I'll be fucking top, dude. If you really, I know everyone's gonna be like, Chauster's delusional, dude. When I was at my prime, I would say I was easily the margin between me and whatever. I don't care what player you would put me against, right? There was a significant difference. There's a significant difference. Top lane, mid lane, especially bot lane. There's a significant difference when I was at my prime. There's no way in hell that when I raised Doublelift as an AD carry player, I was already not playing the game. I was just leveraging what I knew from before. I was already, because basically at the time I stopped playing solo queue, got in relationship, started spending all this time, you know, and then like everything I knew from before kind of made it to like I still know how to play the game. I'm still able to teach you how to play the game, but it can only be so good, right? But like let's just bring it back a year before that, and you're just like, okay, top laners, mid laners, name a good top laner from that time. Dyrus?
It would have been like
I think
McNoon or Shy, like
yeah, and I would easily if you actually go back, I easily can win lane against any of them, any mid laner as well. Back in you know
Ambition.
Too, back in,
that's like season 2.
Back in the Korean days, I think back in solo queue. Either the first time I was solo queuing still, I always win lane.
After the server split, after Koreans got the server split.
Yeah, back when I went to the Korean server. So what I think separates me as a player from other people is I play lane very well, right? I think a lot of people forget, and they read that stupid paragraph that I wrote myself, that has been leveraged on Gamepedia or Wiki or whatever. It's like, I think one day Kelby told me to write a paragraph about myself to put on the website, like a little bio, right? And I basically wrote some spiel about how basically I'm a player who wants to be known more for analytical type things versus mechanical. But then I'll be the first person to say, do you really think I did not have mechanics? You would know, Loco. I was very, very good back in the day.
I still think you were very good back in the day, but like compared, like even for a support position in your prime, I don't think you were better than Mad Life in season 2. I think season 2 Mad Life was probably one of the peaks for support players.
I don't know.
Wait a minute.
But that's the
Look,
thing.
is it-
I'm not supposed to be a support player. I'm supposed to be a carry player.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I am a carry player. I was originally an 80 carry player.
Mhm.
Originally, back in season 1, I would, if you remember, I was like the best 80 carry.
Mhm.
Period.
Mm.
And that all went to shit because I started dual laning. And now it wasn't a one man show anymore. Now it was a 2-man show where I was laning with elements. And then I went from being top tier CS, top tier, everything. I was carrying hard.
Mhm.
Chauster's best 80 carry. All of a sudden, these games happen where it's like Chauster can't CS. Wow, his CS is so low, dude. Chauster sucks. It's like, dude, are you fucking serious? You know how bot lane works, dude? Like it's not a one man show. There's 2 people there.
One of the viewer question was, Chauster, do you still talk to Doublelift? And like, I guess on top of that, like, what's your relationship with Doublelift nowadays?
So I talk to Doublelift very infrequently. Very recently, because of the recent Path of Exile season. Path of Exile, it's like a Diablo-like video game. I think a lot of League pros actually play that in their spare time. So he's in my guild now, and I guess we're just kind of in the PoE guild together. I think we don't really talk, but I mean, anytime I talk with anyone from the league scene, like even to you, I haven't talked to you in
forever.
I haven't talked to you in 6 years, but to me, I could have been just yesterday. That's how I feel. I don't know how you feel. Maybe you feel like you're talking to a phantom, But
No, yeah.
To me, it feels like Loco. You're a longtime contact. You're my friend, and I really do feel that way about everyone from the league scene. There's like a special connection there.
Yeah,
That's just how I feel. I don't know how stupid or cliche that sounds.
No, especially old school players like you, like Andy. Andy, I still talk to a lot. Chaos is crazy, so we don't talk to Chaos. I'll talk to Dyrus time to time, but like with you and me, like we're just like League of Legends players. Like when League of Legends became huge, like I don't think whenever you talk to me, like you want something from me, and hopefully you don't think of me vice versa. But when it comes to like newer school and like I guess like the newer people that are in, I get like an inkling of doubt. But like yeah, with old school players, like things are different, and there is like a special connection.
Yeah, I mean you share something special. You were there, kind of like League of Legends grassroots. And we all played together, we all hung out together. It was easily the best time. It was the best. I honestly think it's the best years of my life, and nothing will ever beat that.
Okay.
Like being a pro player.
Jordan,
Yeah, I mean I feel the same way.
Do you have that with like old school CS:GO people?
CS:GO.
No, he means for me. Yeah, of course, yeah. But that's also because remember Counter-Strike, like before CS:GO, did go back to like 2000s and 1999 was when the game came out. So yeah, it's definitely the case. I would say personally, I've experienced it a lot because with like the YouTube era, I've done a lot of reflections interviews with people who retired like 10 years ago. They haven't even played in 10 years, and I have to say, the longer people have been retired, the general rule I would give is the more fondly they look back upon their time as a pro gamer. Because what happens is the further you get away from a scenario, it's like, have you ever heard that famous quote that says like comedy is tragedy plus time? The idea is once you get far enough away from something, you can laugh at it, and it's like to see the funny side, even if it's something really fucked up, that's why that joke exists. Like, what, too soon, bro? Like, it's kind of like that with people's careers. Once they get far enough away from it, that they don't remember like the day to day of like why this guy annoyed them, or why like, oh, it was so bullshit that we came third in that tournament. When they just remember the good times of like the matches we won and the really fun times, and when we had that great win over this team, and when I was at my prime, like people tend to remember that really fondly. And if anything, they get a lot like actually more into telling their story like later on when they've been retired for a while, because that's when they want to like recall things and have fun nostalgically remembering them, hopefully, and generally people don't get as upset about things that happened back then. Like you see in this conversation here, like there's nothing particularly controversial when Chauster was talking about, some of those topics at the time might have been controversial, but it's just fun when you talk about them now, right?
Yeah, I mean old school League of Legends was like Saint and Chauster and Hotshot yelling at each other, Doublelift in a corner, Hotshot's girlfriend crying in a corner.
But yeah, I think
it was crazy.
Those arguments are some of my greatest memories. I treasure I remember so many stupid arguments. It's great, and I still talk to Hotshot here and there. We try to play games sometimes together. Like now, he's kind of like a professional no lifer. So he
Yeah.
like
Dude, Hotshot
just
cashed out. Hotshot, oof.
yeah. I mean, he cashed out, and now he's like playing games nonstop. He's like he's back to ground zero.
Yeah.
But with money.
Yeah,
Now
like
he's back to the basement. He's back to playing games.
back to mom's basement.
That's
Hotshot
good.
literally
That's
used
like,
he used to literally play from his mom's basement.
yeah, he used to play in his mom's basement. And no lie, he skipped school, and his mom's a teacher too. He just skipped school and he just play games.
Yeah.
But now he cashed out, and now he's playing.
Are you jealous at all?
I don't think I'm jealous. I don't think so. I mean, he deserved it. If anything, I tend to not have any regrets.
CLG as a team was just as much as your team, as much as GG's team, as Hotshot's. In name,
Like you said, Chauster,
it was
like
Hotshot's
if everyone had left CLG immediately, if you and Big Fat GG leave, then it's not CLG, right? So in a way, you did kind of help build it, right?
I mean, I understand. I had some of these thoughts in the past, but it's not justified. If I really wanted a piece of CLG, I would have stood up and I would have taken it, but I didn't. That's my own.
You never knew it
choice.
was going to be worth millions and millions of dollars, though.
It's like anyone with any entrepreneurial opportunity.
Sure.
Most people who don't have that mindset, they're gonna look at it and they're gonna be like, "It's gonna fail. It's gonna fail. I don't have the expertise. I don't know what's going on." But in hindsight, you have someone like Hotshot, who is like, "Oh my God, so not good with business." I know some of his business fuck ups is like in the past. It's not good, dude. Some of the things he's done, very, very amateur, very bad. But even him, a basement dwelling nerd, made it. So yeah, I could have definitely done it, but I didn't do it. So I have no one else to blame but myself.
Sure.
I'm not jealous. I accept the consequences, essentially.
Okay.
On that ground, though, Loco, I will say that unfortunately, that is just like a loser's mentality. Anyone who says like, "Oh, that could have been me," like, "Oh, I should have done X, Y, and Z," like that tends to suggest to me like you don't like where your own life is at right now. Because I actually had a very similar scenario where I was involved with a company very early on, which you're not going to know if you're not from CS, but people who know CS will know this company. It's called ESEA, and I was basically like. I was part owner of this company. No one knows this story actually, and that company was sold about maybe 10 years later to the company that owns ESL. And it was sold for maybe, like off the top of my head, I'm going to say like $22 million or something, So if I'd have stuck around in that company, I would have made millions of dollars when they'd have sold this company. But what's funny is I actually never even thought of that detail myself until a few years ago. Like even when it was sold, I never thought, I would have had 100% that, because I'd already left that company literally about like 8 years before that, like I only worked with them for a couple of years and I left over like a personal dispute with one of the owners, one of the fellow guys who I was working with. So what's funny is I actually had never stopped and thought like, what would have happened? Or if I'd have done X, Y, because in my life, it was like, well, that didn't happen. I didn't have a good relationship with this person. If I'd have stayed there, like I'm kind of the opinion that like, if you split apart for that reason, you probably should split apart. You probably just don't work together as people. So I actually never do think about that in that angle, which people might not believe, but just, and I mean, if my life sucked now, maybe I would think about it. Maybe I'd be like, oh, bloody hell, should have done that. I could have been somebody. But like, I think that's just kind of like a perspective that only works if you're not the person. Because like Chauster says, instead you just think of all the things you did instead. You go, well, I'm glad I picked whatever I did,
I'm generally pretty happy with my life, but there was a point like after TSM where I knew franchising was going to happen and I wanted a percentage of a team so badly. And
it's a good idea.
And TL, like they gave me like a booger's force and it would have been vested equity. So when me and TL split ways, I'd had nothing. And then I joined Goldcoin United and I had 10% ownership of that team. And we almost made LCS. And even after not making LCS, we almost made franchising through merging with another company that made franchising. And that didn't happen. And when I got the Golden Guardians job, my pay was really great. But at that point, I knew I would never have equity in franchising. So I mean,
But here's the
Hmm?
thing: if you'd have succeeded then, yeah, you'd have a little percentage. You might have been able to make millions one day, but you know what? You wouldn't have just been sat chatting shit with Thorin, getting paid mad money when we get all the sponsors in here. We'll probably get some other fucking old ass people. We'll get a fucking hot shot in here or something. We'll ask him why he didn't learn to play more than 2 champions over a 10-year career. We'll get all that. So in the end, it all worked out for you, Loco. So
Sure.
just look at the bright side.
But I mean, am happy, and I do think we are gonna make a lot of money next year. But it's just equity in a franchise team, man. That's gonna be worth. That's not gonna be my money. That's gonna be my children's money. That's gonna be my children's money. Like, whew.
If it's any consolation, you'll probably never have kids anyway, Loco. So don't worry about it.
Okay. Chauster,
Another viewer question.
a lot of people are asking about GG. How good was GG back in his day, and like what kind of happened with GG?
I mean, GG, like, I have a different opinion too, because I always think, how GG was lauded as the best player, right? So I always play with GG. I always pre-made with him. Like, I knew GG was very good in his he was very good before I am Guangzhou.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened after Guangzhou, I don't remember. I think he had already gone into a relationship going into Guangzhou. Failed completely at Guangzhou. He bombed it. He just fucked up royally. So then what happened is, like, before that, he was like, GG's good. Afterwards, he failed. You kind of tell him, like, oh, you gotta do this and that. And I think he lost confidence, and it changed his playstyle. It just changed him, irreversibly changed him afterward.
Mm.
Part of that's because we're toxic. Part of that's because of relationship. But that's what happened.
Mm.
But as for how good he was, I would say GG was very good macro. He was very ahead of his time. Like, he taught me things about the macro game. Like, I don't really think I really learned much from I didn't really learn too much afterwards, kind of like playing the game, because you're kind of once you kind of know what's going on, it's more of reaction. You learn things kind of as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, he taught me a lot. So he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
I wouldn't go on to say like he was undisputed the best, blah blah this, blah that. I mean, I remember like he could lose lane easily to like Reginald. It happens. So
you keep mentioning Andy as someone you have respect for. Is there any old school players other than Andy that you have a lot of respect for, and like you still think would be good nowadays?
I bring up Reginald a lot because he's not really a common example people use. I bring him up because he's a good example for one of my unpopular opinions on player skill. I truly believe a player's skill can be seen very early in their career. You don't go from shit tier player to LCS. You probably had it in you the entire time. Like right now, let's just say someone's been playing for 2 years. They're the Diamond 1. I don't think I could coach him to make him LCS player. I don't think he's capable. Maybe he's just not capable of learning. But like someone like Reginald, who, even in today's age, you're going on, players in season, I don't know what season is.
Season 8. It's going into season 8. Yeah,
players
going into
season 8 compared to players in season 1, dude, it's world difference. They've had all these years of improvement. Yeah, they're a lot more practiced. But if I were to take a very high skilled player, like an actually good player from season 1, season 2, gave them some time in their role, they could be competitive easily.
Of course, yeah.
I think. And a good example of that is like Pool Belter is a relic of the past at this point. I don't know. Yeah, he played back in season 1. Okay. He wasn't even known for being great, but he was good. He was competitive in season 1. Pool Belter as a child. He must have been 14 at the time. Yeah. And now he's still very relevant. Would I say Pool Belter just got insanely better over the last few years? No, I don't think so. I think he was always this good. And his level of good is why he is still at the top. It's because that quality of player is just not, it's hard to find players that good,
I think what you mean by good is like the willingness to learn and the ability to learn. agree with some of the statement. Like if you take
I think I'm really saying I'm really saying it's natural. I'm really saying it's talent.
Mm.
It's talent, and part of that encompasses ability to learn. Yeah.
What do you think
So
about
I
like the
think
statements people make? Like if you take like a diamond player nowadays and send them back like 5 years, like they would crush everyone.
No, I really do not believe that for a second. People can believe that. I have a very different opinion on that.
Mm.
Like, God, I have such a different opinion because I really think that skill early on,
Mhm.
you already established that you are this good at the video game. Naturally, you already your heads and shoulders above everyone else. The only difference nowadays is that information is everywhere.
Yeah.
You can digest it. Someone can feed it to you.
I mean, but that diamond player would have all that information. They would have
Mm-hmm.
access to like years of gameplay, and now that's part of them. When they go
But
back, wouldn't they be able to smash?
then you're gonna put the same person.
Mhm.
Let's just assume. Let me just make up a scenario.
Mhm.
You take random Diamond 1 player.
Okay.
Let's just assume for whatever reason he's better than me
Mhm.
back in the past. Let's just assume that. You put that guy against me, I will learn and I will beat him immediately. There is no question in my mind that this diamond shitter is going to beat me at my prime. There's no fucking way, dude. And I think any old pro, they won't say it as bluntly as me, but they would probably say this. They would probably believe the same thing.
Yeah, the part I never understood about that angle when people say it, because let's be real, the real reason people love to say that argument, and they always use an example like Chauster here, it's never like take a bad pro now. No, it's always like take back a Masters player and put him in the season 2 and he would dominate everyone. It's because what they really want to say is take me back and I'd beat all these old pros. Like that's what they want to say because they believe, I would have been good if I'd have been in season 1. It's like you wouldn't, mate. That's like someone now saying, take the guy who was on the bench for the Houston Rockets and send him back to Wilt Chamberlain's time in the NBA and he'd dominate. You wouldn't. Like you might be a competent player. You might have some little advantage early on of some concepts you know about the game that other people wouldn't know. But firstly, as Chauster mentioned, the best players would immediately start leveling up based on what you're doing. So even if you came with some unique shit, they would actually just get ahead of where they would have been in the time stream because they could now learn it off you. Here's the one thing you can't say if you're a new person, which is that you would have been good if you'd have been back then as a real player. The guy who's back then can make the argument, hey, you know what? If I had the current training, if I had the current salary, if I had a team house and all the training, maybe I would be as good because I was good back then. The current diamond player can't actually know that he'd be as good back then. If he'd have just been born then and played, probably be shit. He's shit now. He's a diamond player. So I've never understood that logic. As far as I can tell, what they're basically just saying is, because I can learn things, I would be better than people who haven't learned those things. Great. Give them a chance to learn. I'm pretty sure they'll beat you. They would have beaten you back then.
I mean, I see that all the time, right? People just try to discredit the early league scene. And I mean, obviously that offends me because that's telling me that, you were only good at this game because you played at a time when it wasn't developed. I agree. It was not nearly as developed as it was now. But what are you going to say? You're going to say everyone back then wasn't good? You're saying if I was in today's age and my motivation was as good as it was back then, that I wouldn't be good because there's more competition? Then the first thing I would do is what are some examples that support my argument? Doublelift, pole belter. These are season 1 pros. They're still very relevant. They're still very competitive today. Back in season 1, I can easily say I'm better than these players. 100%.
Put it this way. If it scales linearly, think about it this way. If Doublelift was really good back then and he's still really good now, what is he just shit? Has he just done nothing in the meantime?
Yeah,
why isn't he the best player ever by that logic?
Where then are these just exceptions to the rule? I really think people, but I can see why people think this way. Is because you do look back at the past and you see a lot of people that should not be pros. I'll be the first person to admit.
Or they see, they'll watch a clip and mechanically you don't do things as smooth as people would now. You make a misplay, sure.
Like I can even say, even for me, I have many clips where I am fucking garbage already at the game. Like you don't understand. The one thing also, like I wanted to say this earlier when you were talking about scouting and pros. There's a reason why scouting will always be relevant, and there's a reason why the pros in the scene will never always be pros. It's just the external factor. It's motivation. Just because just hypothetically, just one pro is really good today, really fucking good. 2 years down the line, that pro might not be very good relative to everyone else. It's not because everyone leveled up. This is what everyone makes as that false assumption. They did not. Yeah, they got a little better. Yeah, they adapted to whatever shitty metagame they didn't even really think about. Really, they lost motivation. And that's very prevalent. It's a mindset that a lot of people have. They look at these pros and they say, "Oh man, he's fallen off. He's gone shit." Or which is true. They got a lot worse. But the alternative is they just think randomly like everyone's just so much better now. They didn't make these mechanical misplays like they did back then.
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to make those mechanical misplays back then either. You know, you just fucked up.
I mean, also like it's not just the motivation. League of Legends just changes so much year to year compared to like other games. So if you don't play for a year or two, like compared to let's say like Counter-Strike or StarCraft, like the dip, or even Dota 2, the dip is so much more, even if you are just as motivated, because the game just changes and it's not the same game you were playing.
I mean, that's true, but didn't I just go back and say if you were capable of very good, basically the game is a vacuum. There's a lot of variables. You learn about the game, fundamentals. If you can be good in this game, why couldn't you be good in another version of that game? If you're subject to the same factors, the same learning, the same processes, you would still be good. The only reason,
the argument people would make is like back then you were competing versus let's say 100 people, and then nowadays you're competing versus hundreds of thousands of people. So like there's people at that
I
skill level.
completely understand, and that's where I would say the average player, for sure, the average player would right now would be better than the average player back then.
Chauster basically covered this because if you notice, he didn't say that he would be the best still now. He said they would be competent now. So when he said if you brought them forwards to now, they would be a competent player. So if anything, he scaled it to go with your argument, Loco, which is as you add more people, sure, if he was the best in 2011, he might not be the best in 2018, but he could be an LCS pro.
Yeah, you can't really make that blanket assumption like, oh yeah, I was the best back then, I'll be the best now. No one really can make that. It's not something you can make. You don't see like NBA, except maybe there's like one outlier, maybe Michael Jordan, right? Maybe let's just forget he exists. Any other NBA player, you'd be like, bring him today. Would he be like? Could he say he's the best, the greatest? Even Michael Jordan, people would say maybe LeBron's better.
Yeah,
sure.
Right. So it's really hard to say.
It's really similar to League, like where like in this era, like shooting matters so much. There's no hand checking, where like back then, like that didn't matter as much, and it was more physical. Now, like
the funniest thing is like the people who started NBA got paid nothing, got nothing, no recognition, and the people afterwards, after everything's said and done, now they get to reap. You know what I mean? That's kind of like
of course.
That's the start of a league. That's just how it is. And that's kind of how, that's kind of how it is, right? And that's how I've accepted it. If you're the start of a league, you don't stick around, you're not going to see
you get nothing.
benefit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sometimes maybe you believe in it, maybe you don't. I think NBA, if you're in the 60s and 70s and you're in the NBA, I think if you walked away, I don't think you made the wrong decision either. So.
Sure, exactly the same scenario. Exactly, it wasn't that great a life, like you might have had other things you wanted to accomplish, you get injured. Yeah, there's a million good reasons why. It's one of those scenarios where it's a fun question for a fan because you're thinking, imagine if I did this. But it's like if you were the guy who actually lived that life, unless your life went to shit, you probably just enjoy whatever you did instead. You can't really know what would have happened anyway. Here's the thing, Chauster might have stuck around. Maybe he was still a player, maybe he's a coach, maybe he does get paid a really high salary, but maybe now he thinks, no, I don't really like League of Legends. I've been doing it all these years. I did it just for check the last few years. Fuck, what would have happened if I'd have walked away? Maybe I could have done something else. He'd be doing the same thing, wouldn't he? You can't really know.
Yeah. Okay. Usually at the end of the show, we ask them to plug their Twitter and Twitch, but I don't think you really care. Anything else you want to say before we end the show, Chow?
Nothing really. I just mean, if I offended anyone watching this, whatever, just remember, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion. And I know a lot of people were not around when I played, so I totally understand. It's whatever, dude. I'm just some delusional old guy. So it's cool, dude.
Okay.
Plus, if you did feel upset or offended, like those feelings and emotions are in your mind and your body. So transcend your body, go into the astral realm, and in that realm, you won't feel any offense whatsoever. So a little bit of philosophy for you guys at the end of the show.
Yeah,
There.
I wanted to end the show, but there is like one thing I have to ask, and I have to ask only you guys, because like I can't ask anyone else. Like so I'm not sure if I told you, but did you guys realize like Glebe also went crazy, not just the Twitter crazy? Glebe Glarbu.
Glebe went crazy,
Indeed.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's a support player for TSM after X Special, and he had like a kill list, and I was on the kill list, and it was serious enough where he uploaded to the internet and he planned it out enough where the FBI contacted me and they told me, hey, you're on a kill list, like you should be careful, like, and
he was like, no, I made up with Thorin and Monty, like, we got back together again. No, there's another one. It's like, oh shit, another kill list.
And they did like an investigation on Glebe, and then also there's like Rayman also like is raising in like gold elo, silver elo, like he's like also like went a little bit he went a little bit cray also. Do you think
still playing?
he still streams sometimes and he rages at people? Do you think so? And people have told me in my stream that like they have a theory, like people on TSM have a bigger tendency to go crazy because, well, the theory is like you get all this fan attention and then you get it taken away from you, and then that makes you go more crazy. Like, do you think there is like a truth to that theory where Chaos, Glebe, and Rayman all went a little bit haywire and they all have the common denominator on being on TSM before?
I mean, I think anyone who's been in a high place before, of position of kind of respect and power previously, and is now like a normie, they can easily be influenced by that, right? It just it kind of depends. It depends on your outlook. It kind of brings it back to your regrets and what you couldn't done. Someone like me, I don't dwell on the past. I think it's kind of like a dead end scenario because the moment you dwell on one decision, why can't you dwell on all your decisions, right? You kind of just live life regretting. That's a weak way to live. I think some people, sorry if that sounded offensive, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it's more like if you live that way, you will be unhappy. Do you want to be unhappy? What will happen is you will stress out, you will die earlier. That's fact. If you look at it forward, you think prospectively, you think what you have today, I'm happy where I'm at. I don't give a single shit what I could have done in the past. I could have had a part of CLG, blah, blah. I could still be a pro player today, blah, blah. But you know what I have today, I'm completely happy. And I'm just happy. I'm completely fine with what I have today. And I think if people can kind of just like accept that, they would not have the crazy people outbreaks where it's like, oh man, I have a kill list. Why? Because maybe they blame you. They probably blame you.
Definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah, they just blame other people for their problems. But really at the end of the day, your own mind, your own thoughts, and your own intentions is what dictates you, right? And if you don't have a grasp on that, then you're not going to be happy.
Dorian, what's your 2 cents on like the crazy people on TSM?
I kind of agree with Chauster on that one. Like, I think it's just like TSM was the biggest team at the time, and especially like the whole streaming angle. People fought, like, you still hear people to this day saying this to pro players, like, you should just retire and become a streamer. And you notice, Loco, I always tell people, don't do that. Like, that is, you're getting advice from someone who doesn't know your industry. It's an industry that's literally changing as we speak. And more importantly, nobody can know where it's going to be in a few years. So if you actually like being a pro player, I always tell people, keep playing. Like, don't quit just for that reason. Like, people telling you you've got a sick career, because you will never know the moment that it can all go downhill for you.